stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. Happy New Year. It is great to be back. I have missed you. Tonight, a shocking viral video has exposed the tyranny at the heart of Sturgeon's Scotland. I'll explain why her COVID authoritarianism is so dangerous in my digest before my superstar panel weigh in. Joining me for the first show of the year, the author and media personality Christine Hamilton, senior reporter at the newspaper Benjamin Butterworth, and social commentator Esther Kraku. And the man behind that shocking video at the Glasgow pub, one of the many victims of the devolved dictator's chilling COVID laws, joins me to tell his story at 10:20. As children continue to bear the brunt of the never-ending COVID nightmare, is it cruel for the government to bring back masks in classrooms? Journalist and children's campaigner Molly Kingsley and broadcaster Nina Mishkov debate that crucial question in The Clash. With a quarter of Britain's workforce at the risk of being wiped out by COVID quarantine, thus crippling the country, should we follow the lead of the US and France by cutting the isolation period from 7 to 5 days to get the nation working again? Our positive Professor Sikora gives his expert take on that at 9:50. Is there actually any evidence behind Justin Trudeau's outrageous claim that the unvaccinated are, wait for it, racist and misogynist? GB News star and the public's voice of reason Neil Oliver tackles that in The Outsider. Prince Andrew's New Year has got off to a pretty torrid start, so is it time the disgraced Duke came out of hiding to give evidence in the Virginia Jeffrey case? Top lawyer Rad Seeger will be uncancelled and in the studio to explain why the royal needs to tackle the allegations head on. After scaremongering scientists who so willingly deprived of our freedoms, like Christopher Whitty, are knighted alongside Tony Blair, is it time we just ended the New Year's honours list altogether? And as sky-high fuel prices threaten to cause a winter of discontent, should Boris Johnson listen to his MPs and scrap green levies from energy bills to avoid a cost of living crisis? I'll debate those topics and more of the day's top stories with my superstar panel in the Media Buzz. And as always, the first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages right here. And before the end of the show, so you've got to stick with us for the next 2 hours, I will crown tonight's greatest Briton and Union jackass. This is Dan Wootton Tonight. Let's go. Just one thing first, Happy New Year. As I said, I have missed you, and while I've been away, I tried to comprehend the past 12 months. I would say 2021 will not go down as a good year in recent history. Fear replaced facts. Trust in the political media and scientific establishment hit rock bottom for damn good reason, in my opinion. But the fight back has begun and real change is coming. So thank you for helping me get through the dark days. The GB News family is so strong, and that matters. I already feel excited about what's ahead this year for the channel too. How superb were Eamon Holmes and Isabel Webster this morning on our brand new breakfast show. I loved it. Oh, and there he was, Bradley, making cameos on the nation's doorstep. I just thought it was absolutely brilliant. Then you bring in Stephen Dixon and Anne Diamond into the mix on weekends. It is just perfection. So thank you for being with GB News at night, and make sure you check out Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel from 6 a.m. too. I've got a lot to say tonight, I have to be honest. I've been saving it up these past couple of weeks. Joining me to go head-to-head, the media personality and author Christine Hamilton, senior reporter at the newspaper Benjamin Butterworth. Christine reckons he's hungover, so maybe he won't be on his best form tonight, but we will see. And the social commentator Esther Kraku. But first, before all of that, the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Thanks, Dan. Great to have you back. I'm Polly Middlehurst with your latest news headlines. And the big story today, in New York, a 12-page legal document which Prince Andrew's lawyers believe will end the civil sex abuse case against him has at last been made public. The 2009 settlement was between Virginia Giuffre and Prince Andrew's former friend, the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The document revealed the terms of a £370,000 payout, and it shows she agreed to release, acquit and forever discharge Epstein or any other person who could have been included as a potential defendant. Prince Andrew's legal team says it voids any claims Miss Giuffre may have against him. The Duke of York has denied any wrongdoing. And in other news today, the Prime Minister's warning the NHS faces considerable pressure over the coming weeks due to the increasing number of COVID cases. The latest figures show more than 157,000 daily infections were recorded in England and in Scotland. Boris Johnson therefore ruling out a reduction in the self-isolation period to 5 days, claiming the risk of an infectious person returning to work is just too high. On a visit to a vaccination hub in Buckinghamshire today, he urged everyone who hasn't yet had their booster to get one.
Just want to make a crucial point to people who are thinking about getting their booster. There are still quite a lot of people who have had 2 jabs but haven't had the third. A third jab really does make a big difference. There are 2 million slots just this week to get your booster, so get boosted now. It can make all the difference in the world. The majority of people who are in ICU, sadly, have not been vaccinated, and certainly the vast majority, about 90%, have not been boosted.
Boris Johnson. A 15-year-old boy has been charged with the murder of Zayn Aimable Lina. Zayn, also aged 15, was fatally stabbed in a park in Croydon last Thursday evening. The teenager was arrested on suspicion of murder late on New Year's Day. He's going to appear at Bromley Magistrates Court on Tuesday. Tributes have been paid to a 14-year-old girl who died after being hit by a car in the West Midlands on New Year's Eve. Olivia Kolek's family described her as the brightest star in their lives. A 39-year-old man was arrested on suspicion of causing death by driving while under the influence of drugs. He's been released under investigation pending further inquiries. And ministers are being urged to bring in a new law that would guarantee all workers 2 weeks of paid leave after a bereavement. The SNP's Patricia Gibson is bringing forward a private member's bill to Westminster, and she says it would give people time to grieve without worrying about financial pressures. That's all from me. I'm back in an hour. See you then. Now back to Dan.
The chilling reality of the United Kingdom under a Labour SNP coalition was laid bare over the New Year period. And it's not something any of us should want to become a reality. In socialist Wales, Mark Drakeford, seemingly so intent on smashing the economy to smithereens, he's started to fine honest folk £60 for going to work in an office. Genuinely, I'm not making that up. Doesn't matter if you're perfectly healthy either. But remember, Drakeford is the man who forced supermarkets to cordon off aisles selling toys and clothes. Now, the Chief Medical Officer in Wales, Sir Frank Atherton, is hysterically proposing that we should all self-isolate for days on end if we have a common cold. And with Labour's love of restrictions, circuit breakers and draconian laws controlling our behaviour, have Welsh COVID rates been any lower than the rest of the UK? No way. According to government data across the pandemic, Wales has had the second highest total rate of cases per 100,000, just under Northern Ireland. Their rate is 20,386.2, and that compares to England's 20,174.2 and Scotland's 17,673.4. In the last 7 days, Wales remains the second highest, again, just behind Northern Ireland. In Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon prizes her role as a COVID dictator, using press conferences broadcast to the nation by the BBC to spread fear and introduce harsh controls on poor Scots. She insists it's to keep them safe. But in my opinion, it's to keep the COVID crisis running for as long as possible so she doesn't have to face the fact her dream of a second independence referendum lies in tatters. So to Sturgeon, Omicron has been a blessing, allowing her to impose new social controls, essentially killing off the Scottish hospitality and entertainment industry once more. Compare and contrast today's Times front pages. So the English edition, there it is, reports that ministers in Westminster are confident new curbs won't be needed, given Plan B has already been imposed and Omicron is a far less severe variant. The Scottish edition, by contrast, reports that large public gatherings could be forbidden in Scotland, forbidden well into the spring, with National Clinical Director Jason Leach saying April will still be too early to host a postponed Hogmanay celebration in Edinburgh. And it's these draconian policies, propagated by Sturgeon, that resulted in ridiculous police overreach and some would say brutality in Scotland that you won't see reported in the mainstream media. Case in point, police raiding the avant-garde gastropub in Glasgow on New Year's Eve, where there are around 50 folk, most of them over 60 years old, simply trying to enjoy their night. Then, for some reason, 2 large police vans, carrying more than 20 officers, according to witnesses, turned up because they were suspected of breaking Sturgeon's outrageously over-the-top COVID rules. The pub may have been targeted because it displays this poster on its door saying, "We have no discrepancy over whether you want to wear a mask or not," and good on them for doing that. But this is what happened when multiple cops stormed the pub.
Just trying to get his coat. No, no, let him by. Just trying to get Andy's girlfriend's coat. Right, let me tell you. I'm going to get report them all.
You're getting the jail, all right? It's as simple as that. Get the jail. Aye, shout me again, you'll get the jail. It's as simple as that. Don't touch me, you assaulted me 3 times there. Don't 2/3 of that, you assaulted me 3 times there.
Yes. She's 75, not a lawbreaker. We're getting put at a pub. Look at the amount of police here.
1 van, 2 vans, 3 vans, 4 vans, 5 vans. We have 6 vans. 6 vans to arrest some old people.
What a despicably unnecessary show of force from Scottish police, who routinely fail to investigate muggings and burglaries. But it's not their fault. It's Sturgeon's fault for introducing such authoritarian laws, banning bar service and enforcing social distancing between groups. Sturgeon has implemented these measures despite only 1 patient with Omicron having been admitted to intensive care in Scotland. Only 1 during this whole outbreak. Now, we'll be speaking to Mark Wynne later in the show. He was the bloke who filmed that footage, actually, and he says police told him to stop dancing and believes they could have caused serious injury to the 50-year-old man thrown to the floor. The police claim they were simply making a routine visit. But come on, it should never have come to this. Sturgeon is criminalising people drinking and having a good time. The Scottish people must continue to stand up against this sort of COVID hysteria before she divides society for good. So I say to Nicola Sturgeon and Mark Drakeford, shame on you. Shame on you for continually playing politics with a virus. To respond now, my superstar panel, the first of the year. It's the media personality and author Christine Hamilton, the hungover senior reporter at the I newspaper Benjamin Butterworth, and the social commentator Esther Kraku. What's Sturgeon doing to Scotland, Christine?
I don't know. I think I ought to apologise, actually, to Benjamin, first of all, because he tells me he's tired, which is a euphemism for hungover, but there we are.
Fake news.
And it is absolutely unbelievable. I mean, Sturgeon is like a sort of angry wasp sealed into a jar, buzzing around, and she does, as you say, seem absolutely determined to spread out this COVID thing. I think she's taking as her example North Korea, where apparently they have banned smiling. Now, you'll be arrested straight away. And I honestly think that's the path she's heading on. And when you look at those statistics that you quoted for Wales, when you consider that the vast majority of Wales and a hell of a lot of Scotland is actually peopled by sheep and animals.
So it hasn't worked?
It hasn't worked, but it's even more surprising. It's not one vast conurbation. No, it hasn't worked. They're destroying their own economies. On New Year's Eve, a friend of mine who lives in Bristol said that the Welsh accents, Bristol was stuffed with Welsh accents enjoying themselves, and some enterprising coach person had organised coaches from Cardiff. Cardiff city centre, by contrast, the Bay Area, where all the nightlife and the pubs, etc., and all the young go, absolutely deserted. So they are both crucifying their own economies on some sort of stupid, ridiculous socialist dogma.
We have to pay for it. Westminster has to pay
exactly.
for it. But that was the mistake from the beginning, the fact that we gave the devolved powers to say over COVID.
And who do we blame for that, Mr Blair?
Well,
who we're going to be talking about later, who Christine has a lot to say about.
I think Boris should have set the tone for this from the very beginning. If it's a national emergency, there shouldn't be, you know, the devolved power shouldn't, because it's coming out of the national.
But they have the power to do it. It's too late now. Drakeford and Sturgeon have the power.
But you know the crazy thing about this as well.
Boris couldn't stop them.
There was a survey done just October last year. It's so weird calling 2021 last year, and the numbers haven't changed in terms of the support for Scottish independence. So it's still about 45%, 48%, and this is just 3 months ago. So it just shows how irrelevant Sturgeon would be if this COVID crisis hadn't happened, because there's no momentum for Scottish independence.
Well, Benjamin,
that's her problem, isn't it? That's her problem.
She likes this crisis, doesn't she? Because it is politically very good for her. Sturgeon's popularity increases every time that she manages to convince Scottish people that they should be very scared. And I believe right now she should be doing the opposite, Benjamin. She should be saying, don't panic, folks. There's one person in all of Scotland who's had Omicron that's ended up in intensive care. Not one person in Scotland has died of or with Omicron. But she's not saying that. What she's doing is banning bar service and banning fun and making the police patrol nightclubs. It's bizarre.
I mean, I think on the one hand, Nicola Sturgeon has inspired the trust of the Scottish people in a way that Boris Johnson has woefully failed to. You know, a lot more of them follow her advice and trust her insight to it than many Westminster politicians. But actually, I do think, I'm afraid, that Scotland and Wales and Northern Ireland probably did jump the gun a bit on how to respond to Omicron. So, you know, it's clear that the number of seriously ill people is very significantly less than for the previous wave, and thank God for that. And I think that actually Nicola Sturgeon might find herself in a rut, because if she doesn't adapt to the fact that this looks like it's a lot less dangerous, then people are going to stop trusting her. I think you're right that she's tried to sort of trade on the pandemic to show her leadership. But the problem is that, you know, the support for independence has been falling in the last 6 months. So I think she's panicking a little bit.
And Esther, can we just...
straws.
Yeah, well, indeed. Esther, can we just talk a little bit about what actually went on in the Avant-Garde pub? Because I was so disturbed by that footage. This is
shocking.
50 people who are, on the whole, around 50 to 70 years old. They are not young hellraisers who are trying to enjoy New Year's Eve. And the police arrive at the pub, seemingly because there's a sign on the door about masks.
6 vans.
6 vans?
Yeah.
Over 20 cops. And I'm sorry, the police, and I support the police on the large. I think the police have a very tough job, and I'm not someone who ever comes on this show and unnecessarily slams the police. But I feel like this was a shocking error of judgment. It was police overreach.
Absolutely. And it was such a waste of resources, right? Well, 6 police vans for a pub. Are you joking?
Well, for a pub of pensioners.
I know, what a complete waste of police resources. But this just shows the kind of atmosphere that's being developed by this legislation that Sturgeon has put forward, because it's a complete overreach. It's completely unnecessary. But also, it just shows that she's actually panicking a little bit. My biggest concern is the fact that there's no accountability.
Yeah.
And this goes back to the reason why the devolved power shouldn't have had a say in COVID policy, because it's national policy. You don't get to bankrupt your local economies, A, and expect Westminster to pay for it, but B, and have no accountability. How do we hold Sturgeon and Drakeford accountable for what they've done?
Well, there was literally an election in Wales, and they voted for Mark Drakeford.
No, but no. We're not talking about Wales and Scotland. We're talking about the United Kingdom. No, because I said they're bankrupt. They're expecting Westminster to pay for it. So I'm talking about the United Kingdom as a whole, and in particular Westminster.
What is extraordinary is that, as you've just said, that the public go on voting for them at the elections last time in May. The socialists in Wales will return. Mark Drakeford has been a socialist paradise since devolution came in. Well, they are accountable, but we pay for it.
And I think they both want to destroy the economy, and so actually spreading this fear is helping them. But Christine Hamilton, Benjamin Butterworth, Esther Krakow, what a great superstar panel for my first night back in 2022, and they are here all night. You know, we're fair and balanced on this show, so in justifying these measures, Let me tell you what Nicola Sturgeon has to say. By the way, we do have an open invitation on the show for both Sturgeon and Drakeford, who I'm sure are probably too gutless to turn up, but I would take them if they want to. Sturgeon said, "We must not underestimate the impact of Omicron, even if the rate of hospitalisation associated with it is lower than past strains of the virus. Case numbers this high will still put an inevitable further strain on the NHS and create significant levels of disruption due to sickness, absence across the economy and critical services." Drakeford has said, "The data shows us that Omicron is now apparent in all parts of Wales and has become the dominant form of coronavirus. On December the 30th, 10,400 new people fell ill with coronavirus in Wales on a single day, and the positivity rate is now 37%, a really, really high figure. The difficult January that we could see coming is with us, and the protections that are in place are necessary to help us get through the challenging weeks ahead." Now, coming up, is there actually any evidence behind Justin Trudeau's outrageous claim that the unvaccinated are racist and misogynist, coming from Mr. Blackface himself? GB News star and the public's voice of reason, Neil Oliver, tackles that in The Outsider. But up next, is it cruel for the government to bring back masks in classrooms? Journalist and children's campaigner Molly Kingsley and broadcaster Nina Mishkov will be schooling us in the clash. As ever, I want to know what you think too. My email address, dan@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet me at GBNews. We've got our poll running there too, and I'll reveal the results straight after the break.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
So looking ahead to tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking wet in places across the south, but brighter and colder further north. Let's take a look at the detail. Zooming into the southwest first, cloudy and damp at the beginning of the day. The rain also falling as snow across some of the moors and hills. Rain also sinking southwards across southeast England, the Midlands and East Anglia during the morning, but parts of Kent and Sussex briefly seeing some early brightness. Across into Wales, and skies should be beginning to brighten up, especially in the north, although there may be a few wintry showers around the north and west. Moving up into the northwest of England, and we start the day much colder than of late, but there will be plenty of sunshine around, maybe even a few wintry showers around as well. Across the Pennines, and it'll be a cold start here, perhaps the odd icy patch around, then there'll be plenty of sunshine through, but a brisk wind making it feel quite a bit colder. Scotland getting off to a wintry start, especially in the north, with some frequent snow showers, which combined with the strong winds could give blizzard-like conditions in some places. Northern Ireland also seeing some wintry showers around during the morning, but in between there will be some spells of sunshine, the brisk wind making it feel very cold, especially along the northeastern coast. Looking towards lunchtime, and southern areas should turn increasingly brighter, with further wintry showers across the north, feeling much colder for all of us. And that's how the weather's shaping up during tomorrow morning.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Neil Oliver and Carol Sikora on the way, but time now for the clash. Children and their education have suffered more than most of us at the hands of draconian COVID restrictions, and it seems the government are keen to extend that nightmare. Secondary school students in England are once again being asked to wear masks in classrooms as the Omicron hysteria extends into the new year. It seems strange that we're back here, considering this is what Boris has previously said about masks in classes.
But not in the classroom, because that's clearly nonsensical. You can't teach with face coverings, and you can't expect people to learn with face coverings.
Nonsensical, pretty emphatic, right, Boris? Well, he'd changed his tune today.
There's increasing body of scientific support for the idea that face masks can contain transmission. We don't want to keep them on. I don't like the idea of having face masks in classroom any more than anybody else does. We won't keep them on a day more than is necessary.
Is it cruel for the government to bring back masks in classrooms? You can tweet me and vote now in our poll at GB News or email me, dan@gbnews.uk. But to help you make your mind up, we're going to debate this first. Joining me is Us For Them founder and children's campaigner Molly Kingsley and the broadcaster Nina Mishkov. Now, Molly, you're furious about this, aren't you?
Livid, yes. I am, Dan. I mean, I think at this point in the pandemic, we just can't see how this is justified. And I think the main thing really is that the vast majority of adults, triple vaccinated adults, at this point are not wearing masks for anything like 7 hours a day. And to my mind, that should end this here and then. You know, we can't subject our children to greater burdens than we are asking of our adult population. It is cruel. You said it yourself.
I mean, Nina, that is a really fair point, isn't it? No adults in an office are told to wear a mask for 8 hours in a day. In fact, in Cabinet, at number 10 Downing Street, they don't wear masks.
Well, they should do, and they should do in offices as well, just because there's two wrongs don't make a right.
But they don't work. Well,
listen, this is ridiculous to say they don't work.
Cloth masks.
Microparticles are the way this virus is spread. If you ingest them in your nose, your mouth, your eyes, if you have a barrier between you and the particles, that goes a long way to preventing you expelling them and infecting other people or taking in other people's... It's not cruel. A mask, I don't understand the hysteria about masks. Masks are a minor inconvenience. None of us likes to wear them. None of us likes to do it. But it's a simple thing. And if the wearing of masks means that there are fewer infections from the very, very infectious Omicron, and it means that schools can stay open, then that's better. Surely it's better to have children or young adults, if you like, because they are young adults, wearing masks, then schools closing or kids being sent home to do, remote learning. That's ridiculous. It's a tiny thing to ask, and saying that it's cruel. How can it be cruel? It's a piece of cloth.
Well, Molly, can you explain why it's cruel, in your opinion, for kids to be in masks?
Absolutely. I mean, look, I think the main thing is there is nothing insignificant about wearing a mask for 7 hours a day. Do you wear a mask for 7 hours a day, Nina?
I've got mine here. I wore it into the studio, and I'll wear it as I stand up from here.
Do you wear it for 7 hours a day? I agree. It is a minor inconvenience to wear it for minutes into a studio. Like, that's not what we're talking about here.
No, I wear it whenever I'm out. Whenever I'm outside of my front door, I wear a mask. I wear a mask
For
indoors
7 hours
and
a day?
outdoors. Outdoors, if I'm amongst people. If you walk into Camden High Street, you're amongst a load of people. I don't want to be walking amongst people breathing on me the whole time.
And do you? Is it something that you feel like has become a security blanket? Because you're an intelligent woman,
I'm
and
an intelligent
if you look
woman,
at the science, Nina, because I've spoken to lots of scientists on this show, it's not going to stop you getting COVID.
It's not. But it helps prevent it. It's like saying don't wear a seatbelt in a car.
It's not like that.
It is the same thing. It is exactly the same thing.
Because a seatbelt will save you.
And so can a mask save you. A mask can
I haven't
save
seen
you.
that evidence. And Molly, it was very interesting. I was listening to Nadeem Zahawi being interviewed this morning, and he hasn't been able to produce any sort of hard and fast evidence at this point that masks in classrooms are going to prevent the spread of COVID. Is there any, Molly?
No, I think this is exactly the point, Dan. There is very low-grade evidence for masks. Generally, actually, there isn't any for the effectiveness of masks in classroom settings. And in fact, Will Quince, the schools minister, said that a matter of about 3 weeks ago in front of the Education Select Committee, said the evidence base is very weak for in schools. And I think the bigger picture here is why are we talking about transmission? Because that is only one side of the equation. And at a point when all adults have thankfully been, triple vaccinated, or adults who want it, and that will include school teachers, and with a virus that is thankfully very mild, we need to move the focus off transmission and onto harms.
The thing is, Molly, the effects may be milder in comparison to Delta, but it is infinitely more infectious. And because the numbers who are going down with it are sometimes triple they're very often triple vaccinated.
But Nina, I bet you were surprised to learn that there is, and this is the whole time since Omicron started spreading in this country, so we're talking weeks and weeks now, that whole time there has only been one person in all of Scotland in intensive care.
Well, that's
Omicron.
in Scotland, but the hospital admissions have. If you have a small percentage of a very large number, that's still a great number of people. And because we haven't had the effects of Christmas, families getting together, or indeed New Year and everybody's celebrating, that'll come in about 2 weeks' time. But I want to know why Molly thinks that it's cruel. What is the problem?
I think it's
what is the effect on young adults of wearing a mask? What is in your opinion?
let me. You mentioned big numbers, Nina. Let me give you a big number. We have 1.5 million children who, as a result of lockdown measures, including masks, are now unable to talk at an age-appropriate level. We have children who are devastated by wearing a mask. There's a piece in the Telegraph published today by a teenager. This is in a child's own words. She says she's devastated about the return of masks. She says, in fact, they have changed school life beyond recognition. Obviously, it's possible to talk in a mask, but having a proper conversation is a strain. Sitting in near silence for a whole day. This is a teenager. You asked. Let me finish.
It's possible.
Sitting in near silence for a whole day is incredibly lonely and isolating, and it has a huge impact on mental health.
For a whole day. It's not isolating if you're all in it together. It's a minor inconvenience.
This is what this child.
And the thing is, what makes it worse for children? What makes it worse for young people is the hysterical approach of adults. If children and young people are very adaptable, it's only older people saying to them, well, this is terrible, you shouldn't have to do this, this is isolating for you. If it was taken as the norm, and a decent parent, without being hysterical, could lead by example,
Nina, imagine
there's
if
nothing
we were
wrong with it.
having this conversation in February 2020. Just cast your mind back. You would think it was child abuse to forcibly make every secondary school child to wear a mask in class all day. We have changed our thinking.
It's not child abuse. It is absolutely protecting them.
But you would have thought it was before this pandemic.
No, and it's protect. Well, no, to other societies. If you look at the Japanese, they always wore masks when they had a cold or.
And they're a totally different society.
Oh, but it's a different society. I understand, but it hasn't caused the collapse of
governments. They're very repressed emotionally. Great people, but we're not Japanese.
No, well, exactly. But there's nothing wrong with adapting another person person's or another race's habits, which will protect us. If it helps to protect people and to protect school teachers and keep them in their jobs and allow children to stay in school and learn rather than being sent home to isolate at home to try and work through a laptop when so many children are deprived and don't have their own laptops, don't have a space, then surely it's a minor sacrifice for schools to remain open, then that's what we should do.
Let me give the final word to Molly then. Molly, what if it was a choice, like Nina says? What if it was a choice between schools closing again or wearing masks in classrooms?
I mean, look, Dan, this is a choice. It's a false choice, and it's a choice that people have been trying to set
Look
up.
at hospitals.
And that is,
Look at the railways.
Please, Nina, can you not interrupt? That is not the choice here. That is a political decision. This is politics disguised as public health. The choice we should be talking about is have our children in
children's
school
health
with no mask or have our children in school with masks. It's not a choice about closing schools. And in fact, we already know that even with or without masks, there will be more disruption. The unions have made that abundantly clear. Masking our children is going to do nothing to
We're
save
not talking
disruption.
about
It is
unions,
going
we're
to
talking
impede
about children's
education.
health. To maintain children's health, children's education, children's safety.
Probably the best thing to happen is for children to get Omicron. It's like a natural vaccine. It's a very positive thing, you would argue.
Fine, okay, if you accept that, but it's not okay for the teachers to get it and then teachers to be off and so many teaching staff to be ill that the school
but I would
remain
argue
open.
a mask will not stop that. I wait to see this evidence from Nadeem Zahawi. I wait to see that. But it's very odd that he wouldn't have released the evidence before announcing the decision if the evidence was any good. But fascinating debate. Thank you both for having it. That was the founder of Us For Them, Molly Kingsley, and the journalist and broadcaster Nina Mishkov. So who do you agree with? Brian on Twitter says, of course it's cruel on so many fronts. We're locking down the country to keep our grannies and granddads safe, even though they should be vaxxed and boosted by now at the expense of giving our children a proper education. It's obscene. Let them breathe. Anthony says, yes, it is cruel. But why aren't the kids rebelling en masse? Gen Z in a nutshell. And Warren says, how can it possibly not have a negative impact on young children wearing masks all day at school? What happens at lunchtime in the canteen? Does the virus have a lunch break whereby it doesn't spread whilst children are eating? And your verdict is now in. 79% of you agree that it is cruel for the government to bring back masks in classrooms, while 21% of you say that it isn't. Now, coming up is slashing the COVID isolation period, the only way to save us from being crippled by Omicron. Positive Professor Sikora has been investigating, and he'll be here at 9:45. But next is Justin Trudeau's claim that the unvaccinated are racist and misogynist, the most ridiculous COVID statement ever. GBNews star Neil Oliver weighs in just a couple of minutes.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world. If
you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview Channel 236.
On Sky, we're Channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
The positive Professor Sikora is on the way, but Neil Oliver is tonight's Outsider First. And the Canadian Prime Minister, Mr. Blackface himself, Justin Trudeau, has sparked outrage after calling the unvaccinated misogynist and racist.
On va s'en sortir de cette pandémie par la vaccination. Puis on en connaît tous des gens qui sont en train d'hésiter un petit peu. On va continuer d'essayer de les convaincre. Mais il y a aussi des gens qui sont farouchement opposés à la vaccination.
Qui sont extrémistes.
Qui croient pas dans la science, qui sont souvent misogynes, souvent racistes aussi. C'est un petit groupe, mais qui prend de la place. Et là, il faut faire un choix en tant que leader, en tant que pays. Est-ce qu'on tolère ces gens-là?
And Neil Oliver joins me now. I mean, Neil, so much to unpack here. Obviously, firstly, this huge irony that this is coming from Trudeau, Mr. Blackface, the guy who seems to have posed in blackface at virtually every party he was at as a teenager. But what's most shocking to me, I think, is that there's absolutely zero evidence behind his claim. So what is he trying to achieve, Neil? What is this really about?
Well, Dan, how could there possibly be proof of such an outrageous set of statements? This, first of all, is why I am an ardent supporter and defender of freedom of speech, because it's by allowing people to speak from the heart that we get crucial and revealing insights into how they think, what they think, the kind of people they actually are. And courtesy of freedom of speech, you know, here we have the Prime Minister of Canada speaking aloud, not in private with friends, you know, maybe under the influence of a few drinks, but soberly on national television, saying that people who are hesitant about an experimental medical procedure also hate women and black people. I mean, that I've been able to speak a sentence like that about a serving Prime Minister of a modern, liberal Western democracy, it staggers me. Yet again, I feel as if I've walked through an invisible door into a parallel universe. It's extraordinary, but this nonetheless is what the Prime Minister of Canada apparently thinks. Now, I mean, when you start to unpack it and unpick it, is he saying, as he seems to be implying, that racists and misogynists would be cured of their racism and misogyny if only they would take their vaccines, that the jab would take away those ills as well as COVID? Or is he saying that it's okay to hate women and black people as long as you've taken your vaccines? You know, that those kinds of racists and misogynists are all right because they've taken the communion wine of vaccine and are thereby almost magically turned into good and better people. Which is it? But I would say, really, that this is the desperation of a man furious, impotently furious at being defied by adults that he believes he controls and who should be doing what he says. It looks like somebody who has actually almost dropped their guard, dropped the mask, so to speak, and revealed something about the kind of person that they really are. And I find that the most revealing thing about what he's been up to in that interview.
Do you think he really believes it, Neil, or is this part of a bullying campaign to shame the unvaccinated into getting jabbed?
Goodness, I mean, who can really look into somebody else's heart, into somebody else's head, and say what they really believe? But this is a man trained, you would think, in media relations, you know, to the highest level, and he must have, you know, a good understanding of what happens when you say things in public. So it must at some level, although I would contend that he's angry and some of that was dripping out in his words, it would also be calculated and tactical. And yes, it begins or it advances that process of demonising people that you don't agree with. So there's something about the way those people are behaving, something they're doing or not doing that you don't like. Maybe you just don't like those people. But you need to find reasons to legitimise your hatred of them. And so it's not enough for him to say just that these people haven't taken a vaccination that he would prefer that they did. He's trying to turn the majority of his population against that group of people, and he's doing that by seeking to demonise them, by saying that they're not just refusing the vaccine, they also hate black people and they hate women, and we know it's all right to to punish people like that. So what's next for Justin Trudeau? Does he finally go on television and just say, right, the time has come, let's get them? He's setting people up as being lesser, as being other, as being despicable, as being guilty of things that are socially unacceptable, misogyny, racism, and to bolt those crimes onto the fact that there are people out there who are hesitant about an experimental medical procedure. I think it's a disgrace. I think it's borderline criminal to invite people to make those connections in their heads, to treat people who are worried about vaccination as being demons in the form of racists and misogynists.
Well, indeed, I agree with all of that. And I especially don't want to hear it from Trudeau, given his blackface past. So let's just remind everyone of that for one moment. Why not? But Neil, this is something that we are hearing increasingly from leaders all around the world. Jacinda Ardern in New Zealand has boasted about the fact that she wants to create a two-tier society when it comes to the unvaccinated. And even today, you have Boris Johnson pointing out yet again, even though his statistics are slightly dodgy, that 90% of people he claims in intensive care are unvaccinated. So why is it that leaders around the world are all so determined to demonise the unvaccinated?
Well, that's a big question, Dan. I think I used the word earlier, desperation. I think there's an undeniable air of desperation coming from leaders across Europe and around the world. We're 2 years into this now, more. You could almost say this is year 4. It's COVID-19. Here we are in 2022, and I think I've always thought that there was a broader agenda about using COVID and the virus to achieve a hitherto unimaginable level of control over the population. And the sell-by date, the use-by date on the virus is up. It hasn't delivered all of the control that they wanted, and it's becoming increasingly desperate. And the mask continues to slip further and further down their faces, so that it becomes impossible to see their restrictions and their actions as being motivated by anything to do with public health. You could argue that at one stage it was, but increasingly it is looking like that COVID was providing an opportunity to get themselves much further down a road towards total control than would have been possible, had this pandemic not come along. It hasn't delivered all that they, for a while, thought they were going to get, and they reek of desperation. And I also think, that footage that you showed, I'm so glad you showed that deplorable footage of what happened in the pub in Glasgow.
I want to know what you think about that, Neil.
Well, apart from on social media, I haven't seen that footage anywhere else. I don't think that I haven't seen it on the rest of mainstream media, and it certainly should be. And it certainly gives the impression that having secured a one-party state in Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon seems intent on, or she's very excited by the idea of a police state at the same time. And the extent to which the trust, the relationship that has long been worked for and achieved between police and public in this country be that Great Britain, be that Scotland, has been eroded to the point where, vast tranches of the population will now be looking on the police with a kind of suspicion and a kind of dread that was hitherto not there. But again, it's desperation, it's anger. These are leaders who aren't getting their own way, and they're behaving like petulant, spoiled children. We're seeing dummies spat out, toys thrown out of the cot at the moment because they're not getting their own way. Jacinda Ardern, yes, seeming to revel in the idea that she was establishing a two-tier society. And all of the wonderful footage coming out of Naples, where the people were told not to have fireworks for New Year, and what a fantastic two-fingered salute. The population,
I completely agree.
The population gave.
And you're right, it's
you
going
can
to get
see
more
the desperation.
Difficult. Yeah, and it's going to get more difficult, and that's why they're going to ramp up the language, because now the scientists tell us, oh, by the way, the booster's only effective for 10 weeks, and Israel going into their 4th jab. So a lot of folk who were prepared early on to essentially do what the government told them in order to get their freedoms back, not that we ever should have, are going to start questioning the narrative. So Neil Oliver, it's great to have you back with me in 2022 and back on GB News. Happy New Year to you, Neil. Thank you so much.
Happy New Year to you, Dan. Great to see you too.
And coming up, we're actually going to have the man behind that shocking viral video that Neil was just talking about of a raid onto a Scottish pub on New Year's Eve. He will actually be here with me to discuss Sturgeon's COVID tyranny. But next, should Boris follow the lead of France and the US by slashing the COVID isolation period? Positive Professor Sikora gives his expert opinion soon.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
So looking ahead to tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking wet in places across the south, but brighter and colder further north. Let's take a look at the detail. Zooming into the southwest first, cloudy and damp at the beginning of the day. The rain also falling as snow across some of the moors and hills. Rain also sinking southwards across southeast England, the Midlands and East Anglia during the morning, but parts of Kent and Sussex briefly seeing some early brightness. Across into Wales, and skies should be beginning to brighten up, especially in the north, although there may be a few wintry showers around the north and west. Moving up into the northwest of England, and we start the day much colder than of late, but there will be plenty of sunshine around, maybe even a few wintry showers around as well. Across the Pennines, and it'll be a cold start here, perhaps the odd icy patch around, then there'll be plenty of sunshine through, but a brisk wind making it feel quite a bit colder. Scotland getting off to a wintry start, especially in the north, with some frequent snow showers, which combined with the strong winds could give blizzard-like conditions in some places. Northern Ireland also seeing some wintry showers around during the morning, but in between there will be some spells of sunshine, the brisk wind making it feel very cold, especially along the northeastern coast. Looking towards lunchtime, and southern areas should turn increasingly brighter, with further wintry showers across the north, feeling much colder for all of us. And that's how the weather's shaping up during tomorrow morning.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world. If
you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Time now for Positive Professor Carol Sikora. And after France followed in the footsteps of the United States by slashing the isolation period for positive COVID cases to 5 days, the government has come under pressure to do the same here. Boris Johnson was non-committal when pressed on the subject today.
We'll continue to look at the infectivity periods, but the key thing is we don't want to be releasing people back into the workplace when they're still infectious, and the risk is you'd increase the numbers of people going back into the workplace who are infectious by a factor of 3. So you might perversely have a negative effect on the workforce, if you see what I mean. So that's the argument we're looking at.
But could this be the way to stop the nation being crippled by Omicron? Let me bring in Positive Professor Carol Sikora to give his expert opinion. Carol, Happy New Year to you. Great to have you back on the show. This is something the US has done. It's something France has done. Surely we should do the same here.
I would agree we should. I mean, the Centre for Disease Control in Atlanta is the world's premier infectious disease institute. There's nothing like it. The amount of research dollars they have thrown at them over the years, they're experts in everything. And the WHO listened to what the CDC says in Atlanta. If they say 5 days is okay, it probably is. You know, when we began this, it was 14, then it became 10 days. And recently, it was 7 days over here. What's the difference? Of course, if you release people after 2 or 3 days, you're risking infectious people going out there. At 5 days, CDC think the risks are very low. Sure, it's better to keep people in for 30 days if you want to, but you know that's not tolerated by society. So everything is a balance. And 5 days seems to me a good way. The problem the NHS had, and cancer treatment, my specialty in particular, is absence. The radiographers, the chemotherapy nurses are isolating because they've told they have to isolate for 7 or 10 days. 7 is a lot better than 10, but 5 would be better than 7. And it would get the NHS moving again.
I know, and it's not just the NHS, is it, Carol? Loads of important industries will be crippled. I mean, we need to keep our supermarkets open, for example. And given that it's so transmissible, but actually far, far less severe than former variants, one of the biggest risks to society is going to come from the number of people at home.
Absolutely. And, you know, supply chain is key to the whole progression of the country, as is transport, public transport. If people are taking time off because they're isolating, they're completely well, and yet staying at home because they're told to, this makes no sense to me. And we've got to get back to normal somehow. The virus wants to live with us. It wants to become endemic. That's the road to endemicity, as we call it. You know, the virus wants to be friends with us, and we've got to be friends with it. We've got to tolerate it as we tolerate the flu, the common cold, and a whole host of other viruses. If we don't, we're going to live in this limbo land for years if we don't do something.
Yeah, and I know we don't know yet, Carol, but Omicron could end up being a very good thing, especially if it gives us immunity against the more severe strains like Delta, which is something that scientists are currently speculating on. I should say as well, Neil, during my Carol, during my conversation with Neil Oliver before the break, I referred to the fact that Boris Johnson had said that 90% of folk who are ending up in intensive care, and these are stats that have been questioned, by the way, but I said that he described them as unvaccinated. In fact, what he's talking about is unboosted. So you've got people who've had the 2 jabs, but maybe don't want the booster jab, ending up very sick. Is that what you're hearing?
You know, the problem for data at the moment, which is released every afternoon at about 4 o'clock or shortly after, it goes back too far. The last data we have for hospitalizations comes from the 27th. That's a week ago on today. And the last total number of people in hospital with COVID, which is roughly 12,000 at the moment, not even 10% of all NHS beds, that was released 5 days ago. So we need more up-to-date data. And I think the reason we're not getting the data, I hate to think of conspiracy theories, but you have to assume something's going on, is that all the doom about hospitals being overrun, it doesn't seem to be the case. They're not being overrun. The ICU, the ventilator admissions, as you just mentioned, have been completely flat for the last 10 days. There are about 800 in the whole country. Now, that's good news, because these are the people that are consuming healthcare resources they need to survive, and they stop routine operations and so on.
And Neil, sorry, Carol, why do I keep saying Neil Oliver? I've got Neil Oliver on my mind. Carol, we
He's a Scotsman, for goodness sake.
I know, I'm so sorry. It's my first day back, baby brain. But we hear that there's one person in all of Scotland who's ended up in intensive care with Omicron. I mean, this is good news. We should be singing it from the rooftops. But, Carolyn, this is something that we'll come back and investigate. Of course, those doom mongers at Sage really need to be taken for task, because remember, one of their very recent models suggested that there could be 6,000 deaths a day. I mean, come on, it's just absolute lunacy, isn't it? But Carol Sikora, the positive professor, will be with us all year investigating all of this. Carol, thank you so much. Great to have you. And it's 10 o'clock, still to come. A shocking video has exposed the tyranny at the heart of Sturgeon, Scotland. And the man who took that footage joins me to tell his story at 10:20. Plus, as at time Prince Andrew came out of hiding to give evidence in the Virginia Jeffrey case, top lawyer Brad Seeger will be in the studio to explain why the disgraced Duke needs to tackle the allegations head-on. That's in Uncancelled. As Tony Blair and lockdown fanatics like Chris Whitty and Jonathan Van Tam are knighted by the Queen, is it time we scrapped the New Year's honours list altogether? And should Boris Johnson listen to 20 of his own MPs and scrap green levies from energy bills to avoid a cost of living crisis? My superstar panel will weigh in the Media Buzz. Tonight, that's the author and media personality Christine Hamilton, senior reporter at the newspaper Benjamin Butterworth, and the social commentator Esther Kraku. Plus, we'll bring you the very first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages in just a moment, and I will crown tonight's greatest Briton and Union jackass, the first of 2022, just before the end of the hour. But before all of that, the news headlines at 10 with Polly Middlehurst.
Dan, thank you. Your news headlines. In New York, a 12-page legal document, which Prince Andrew's lawyers believe will end the civil sex abuse case against him, has been made public. The 2009 settlement was between Virginia Giuffre and Prince Andrew's former friend, the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The document revealed the terms of a £370,000 payout, and it shows she agreed to release, acquit and forever discharge Epstein or any other person who could have been included as a potential defendant. Prince Andrew's legal team says it voids any claims Miss Giuffre may have against him. The Duke of York has denied any wrongdoing. Well, in other news, the Prime Minister's warning the NHS faces considerable pressure over the coming weeks due to increasing COVID cases. The latest figures show more than 157,000 daily infections were recorded in England and Scotland. Boris Johnson's ruling out a reduction in the self-isolation period to 5 days, saying the risk of an infectious person returning to work is just too high. Well, on a visit to a vaccination hub in Buckinghamshire today, he urged everyone who hasn't yet had their booster to get one.
I want to make a crucial point to people who are thinking about getting their booster. There are still quite a lot of people who have had 2 jabs but haven't had the third. A third jab really does make a big difference. There are 2 million slots just this week to get your booster, so get boosted now. It can make all the difference in the world. The majority of people who are in ICU, sadly, have not been vaccinated, and certainly the vast majority, about 90%, have not been boosted.
Boris Johnson. A 15-year-old boy has been charged with the murder of Zayn Aimable Lina. Zayn, also aged 15, was fatally stabbed in a park in Croydon last Thursday evening. The teenager was arrested on suspicion of murder late on New Year's Day. He's going to appear at Bromley Magistrates Court on Tuesday. And tributes have been paid to a 14-year-old girl who died after being hit by a car in the West Midlands on New Year's Eve. Olivia Kolek's family described her as the brightest star in their lives. A 39-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of causing death by driving while under the influence of drugs. He's been released under investigation pending further inquiries. Ministers are being urged to bring in a new law that would guarantee all workers 2 weeks of paid leave after a bereavement. The SNP's Patricia Gibson is bringing forward a private member's bill to Westminster, saying it's going to give people time to grieve without worrying about financial pressures. You're up to date. I'm back in an hour. Now back to Dan Wootton.
Tomorrow's News Tonight, now in our Media Buzz. The very first look at the front pages for the very first time this year, hot off the press. It's eating or heating, says the Metro. Millions of families face seismic energy bill rises this year, forcing many cash-strapped people to choose between heating their homes or eating. The energy price cap lifts in April. We'll be talking about it later on in the show. The Independent reports on the details of a settlement between disgraced billionaire Jeffrey Epstein and Virginia Giuffre. Prince Andrew's lawyers believe the settlement will stop him facing a civil sex case against him. The document revealed the terms of a $500,000 payout from Epstein to Giuffre. The Eye reports NHS leaders are warning the PM over the what they call the growing staffing crisis because of coronavirus. The Royal College of Nursing and other medics have urged the government to take a more cautious approach on restrictions. And Benjamin Butterworth, that's your newspaper. And I'm just going to clarify, you have not been drinking last night because you were working from very early morning on the Eye. My apology.
I was working till 11 p.m. and then up at 5 a.m. this morning working.
He's a hard worker, Christine Hamilton.
No wonder you were tired.
Esther Kraku back with us as well, the social commentator. Now, Sir Tony Blair. That is going to take a hell of a lot of getting used to, let me tell you. The former PM and Labour leader, was given a knighthood in the Queen's New Year's Honours List. But as one of the most controversial UK political figures in recent history, his appointment has been met with a huge amount of backlash. Within the last few moments, more than 500,000 people have signed a petition on change.org for it to be rescinded. And I have to say, he's not the only polarising nominee. As if the UK's handling of COVID-19 couldn't get any more farcical, Chris Whitty, Jonathan Van Tam have been awarded knighthoods for dodgy modelling and constant scaremongering, while Jenny Harries will be made a dame for overseeing the test and trace system at a time when no one can get their hands on any tests. I have to say, I agree with the sentiment of Jamie Jenkins, former head of health analysis at the ONS, who told the Daily Telegraph, the big thing for me is that I've given these top awards, but we haven't even had an inquiry for COVID-19 yet. So we're still in a pandemic and there's been no scrutiny over the decisions that they have had influence over. So is it a bit premature? Yes, it definitely is premature. I don't think there's any proof that we should be calling Jenny Harries a dame. She can't even get me a lateral flow test. So, after all of these controversies, are the New Year's Honours List just more trouble than they're worth, and should they be scrapped? I know, Christine, you are chomping at the bit on this one. You're fuming about Sir Tony Blair. Are you going to call him Sir Tony?
I hope I never have to call him anything. First of all, very briefly, on the... Sir Anthony, by the way, I'm sure. On the honours list, it's... At the bottom end of the honours list, you get the lollipop lady who has served her community for 25, 30
and I like
years,
that.
Come wind, rain or whatever, and she gets some very modest honour. I like that. That is the sort of person. Then the other end of the scale, you get the Whitties and the Van Dams, who were just doing their job, which hasn't been finished yet.
And multi-millionaire celebrities.
Exactly. I mean, it is an absolute nonsense. And, I mean, you said your blood was boiling about Tony Blair. I wonder, and this is in the gift of the Queen, this one, let's remember, this is not a political nomination. The Queen herself, she's the only person who can grant this.
But she's advised, isn't she?
She is, and I bet you that if Philip was alive, Prince Philip was still alive, it wouldn't have happened. I simply cannot see him allowing that to happen. I think it's appalling. And it's the most noble order of the Garter. Do you associate most noble with Tony Blair? No.
I don't.
No. And there are three main reasons where I can think of. First of all is obviously Afghanistan, where all those young men went above and beyond duty. Many of them were killed. And he knew perfectly well that they were criminally under-equipped. They didn't have enough ammunition, they didn't have enough morphine, they didn't have enough radios. He knew all that, and yet he sent them to war. It is an absolute insult to all of them. And secondly, Brexit. He was the cheerleader for defying the democratic vote. He was the
biggest democratic vote in our history.
And he went on and on and on about it, even after it had been decided. He shouldn't get it for that. And also, we mentioned it earlier, devolution. He is responsible if we have the ultimate...
And you haven't even mentioned Iraq.
I haven't mentioned Iraq. I won't have enough time. But if devolution leads, as at the moment it's precariously looking as though it might, to the breakup of the United Kingdom, with Scotland and the Northern Ireland disappearing, what on earth is the Queen going to think about that?
But you don't think, Esther, this was a personal decision from the Queen? You just
I
think she signs off.
I refuse to believe it. Maybe I'm being deluded. I fundamentally refuse to believe that the Queen was in her bed, minding her business, thinking of life, and just thought, you know what, let me just give Tony Blair the highest honour. I refuse. I fundamentally refuse.
Well, look, you know, we cover all sides of the argument here on Dan Wootton tonight. And Benjamin Butterworth, you're a Tony Blair groupie, aren't you? You love the bloke. You're on his Christmas card list.
I mean, Tony Blair is the greatest living Briton in my view. You know, this is a man...
How dare you?
Well, but hang on.
That maybe is the most ridiculous thing you've ever said.
No, not at all. I mean, this is a man...
You get his Christmas cards, don't you?
I do get his Christmas cards. This is a man
who... It'll be a whopper this year. He'll all be in his garter robes and his feather, ostrich feather.
But look, you know, he delivered the longest period of economic growth this country's ever had. He pulled 1 million kids out of poverty. You know, he massively improved the NHS and the education systems. He introduced, you know, equal rights for gay men like me. You know, that's a hugely beneficial legacy, and one that Conservative governments, long after he left, actually decided in some cases not to dismantle because they agreed it was the right thing. But actually, even if you don't accept, as I put, that he is, you know, the best Prime Minister and certainly the longest-serving Prime Minister that's living, well, he did serve the country with winning elections 3 times. And I think if you respect the will of the British people in their votes, then actually I think that Tony Blair, just like the other occupiers of the office of Prime Minister, should be knighted.
But Christine, that's why I'm getting fed up with the whole system, if I'm honest. Because what you can do, whatever you please, enter probably an illegal war and still become a surge just because it's what happens. Just like Lindsay Hoyle, the current speaker, saying, oh, John Bercow, who was despicable as speaker, literally did everything he could to overturn the most important and significant democratic vote in our history. And Hoyle still believes that Bercow should receive a knighthood as well, just because it's what we do. And I think it shows that the establishment stinks.
I find it quite extraordinary that Lindsay Hoyle should have even entered into that. I mean, Bercow has not gone to the House of Lords, end of. He didn't deserve to go, let's leave it at that. I find it extraordinary that he's entered into it. I don't say that Tony Blair was all bad. Absolutely not. And you mentioned gay rights, and he did a great deal to bring all that forward, and I applaud him for that. But I think his bad points so outweigh. And if he'd just been made Sir Tony Blair, that's one thing. But actually to be appointed to this, it is the oldest still extant order of chivalry. I mean, it's been going since Edward III, was it 1384 or something? And I just find it is unbelievable that somebody like that, I mean, you mentioned the illegal war, should be into that order.
I mean, Iraq should be at the top of that list, really.
I can hardly get the words out how appalled I am. And I agree with you. I mean, I do not know how...
But the thing is,
hang on.
Even though I'm going to say something that sounds horrific, I agree with you.
Again?
I agree with you, Ben, to an extent. No, I do. I tweeted something positive about Tony Blair a few weeks ago, and I was almost eaten alive on Twitter. I can appreciate that he was a remarkable politician.
He did some great things.
Yeah, and I can appreciate the good things he did.
And we can all agree on that.
However, it will be a cold day in hell if I do not, throw up in my mouth a little bit. That he should have deserved this honour. I'm sorry, but I think the bigger issue is the fact that the honours list is becoming more and more redundant. I didn't even agree with what's his name, Lewis Hamilton, getting the honour, because that man has not said a positive thing about the UK for as long as I've seen him in the media.
Well, and I mean, let's be honest, he doesn't want to reside here because he doesn't want to pay British tax.
Exactly.
And this is what infuriates me about the entire system. I feel like it's political. I feel like it's used by governments to appease high-profile celebrities, to appease high-profile donors. And Benjamin, can we talk about Van Dam and Whitty and Harries? Because I feel like giving them an honour, making them sirs and dames before this inquiry has taken place is almost prejudging the inquiry, because I'm sorry, that inquiry, if it's any good, is going to have very harsh words for these people, especially Jenny Harries, by the way, who, remember, was the person who told us all that we should not do any testing for coronavirus. It was completely redundant, she claimed. Then she told us that face masks didn't work, and now she's in charge of the test and trace system, and we can't even get a test. So you tell me, Benjamin, how she should become a dame.
I mean, I think in the case
of that litany of failures.
I think in the case of Chris Whitty and Jonathan Van Tam, they have clearly worked, exceptionally hard. They have,
but that's their job, as Christine says.
Hang on, let me speak. And they have the trust of the British people in an overwhelming majority.
The one on the British Isles.
And polls show that by a mile. These are people that will have saved huge numbers of lives.
OK, well, what about Jenny Harries with that litany of failures?
I have to say, I think Jenny... I think it would be too awkward for the government to not give Jenny Harries an honour.
OK, so we'll just throw one to her.
But look,
just wait.
Sir Neil Ferguson and all his...
But you must respect the extraordinary pressure that these scientists have been under. And if you disagree...
I actually don't respect
I'm sorry, they didn't do it for free. Can we just remember that?
But they did a truly extraordinary job in a period of national crisis.
I'm sorry, Benjamin, we're not talking about the people who developed the vaccine, for example.
Their
modelling was wrong, their projections were wrong, their advice was wrong, and they plunged this country into lockdown, and that is going to cause untold damage for years. And even folk on the left are starting to realise now the damage of lockdown.
No, I mean, total nonsense. You will never see Sir Dan Wootton for your scientific predictions.
And believe me, I would certainly never want that, because I think any journalist or high-profile figure who takes any sort of honour from the government can no longer be trusted. I personally would like to see the whole system scrapped. But look, it's nigh on impossible to emerge from the festive season without a few extra pounds. I can certainly tell you that after my diet the last couple of weeks. And celebs are no different. Grammy Award-winning American singer Lizzo posted this video on her Instagram, which has the handle @LizzoBeEating, and declared in the caption, "I gained weight, I look good." But one person who didn't agree, though, is my panellist tonight, Esther Kraku, who tweeted, "I'm sorry, but this is grotesque." Now, Esther, I wanted to bring this up with you before opening the floor to the rest of my panel. Esther, in the eyes of many, on that house site Twitter, you're actually body shaming Lizzo here, who's just trying to share a bit of
body positivity and take the stigma out of eating so much over Christmas, like me, because I've put on a lot of weight over Christmas.
I'm sorry,
so let me tell you.
Lizzo is like two of you. Can I just say?
She looks good, doesn't she?
She doesn't look good. She is morbidly obese. That video is grotesque. And I'm not body shaming her because she chose to put that on social media and she knew very well that being the size of a building with feet would solicit some comments from people online. We should stop.
But she feels good about herself. Listen, look at her go.
Science is science. Follow the science, right? I'm sorry. The fact remains. It doesn't matter how you feel. This is a diabetes in the making, right? There's a litany of health problems that come with being that size, and we need to have a frank conversation about actual healthy weight. I'm not saying that you have to be shaped a certain way. You have to be a healthy weight. We need to start normalizing.
Benjamin, do you think Lizzo's healthy there?
I mean, look, being that overweight is not healthy by nature. But, you know, I think people that are really overweight, they don't need someone to point it out, right? They're pretty aware. They're overweight, not blind.
Well, she's feeling good.
She seems blind.
And so, you know, actually, I think that, you know, someone like Lizzo clearly has a big following because a lot of people who are bigger, particularly in the US, feel, you know, great about themselves when they can see someone like that being successful and
saying that's unhealthy.
They should not feel good about themselves because they have not done anything to feel good about themselves.
But they've eaten.
What?
They've eaten a lot.
Well, yeah, exactly. But that's not an achievement. I recognise that a lot of people that get to that weight often have associated mental health issues. But that does not change the reality or the fact that being that size is not healthy. We should not be celebrating it. She does not look good. Being the size, being a building with feet is not cute.
But I mean, look, it's not healthy. I don't think anyone would dispute that. But I suspect Lizzo knows that better than anybody, that it's unhealthy to be that weight. But she feels good about herself.
Adele was shamed for losing weight.
And people have their own, you know, weight, their own sense of how they want to look, which makes them feel good. And I would rather someone like her be happy in that size than the many miserable thin people.
I would rather her be a healthy weight and just miserable. Oh, damn it, I look good. And just be angry.
You'd rather her be miserable?
Yeah, no, I'd rather her be a healthy weight and look past the mirror and just curse at herself. Like, damn it, I look good, but I don't feel it.
This is a fascinating
I think
I'm not joking.
It's a fascinating thing, isn't it? I remember back to the 90s, you know, Oprah Winfrey, famously, every time she lost significant amount of weight, her ratings plummeted because women engaged with her when they could see themselves in her. And I think there's a bit of that with Lizzo. I would question, I'm someone who really struggles with my weight, and I do put on a lot of weight, and I can be a lot bigger than I am and a lot slimmer than I am. I would never celebrate putting on weight. I think you should still feel good about yourself. What I worry about is Lizzo is celebrating putting on weight, and that's a bit dangerous, isn't it?
I think that's when you know that the scales have tipped too far, because Adele was shamed for losing weight. And I just think we're losing sight of feelings of
I know, but we don't like skinny, Botoxed up Adele. We want to associate with her.
I do. I love it. I love some collarbones.
Okay, Esther Cracknell, Benjamin Butterworth and Christine Hamilton, do stand by. Because coming up very shortly, we're going to be asking whether Boris Johnson should scrap green levies to save us from this forthcoming cost of living crisis, which feels inevitable. That's as the media buzz continues. Plus, of course, more of tomorrow's newspaper front pages as soon as they drop. But next, a pub goer who exposed a shocking police crackdown in Sturgeon's COVID police state joins me. Stay tuned for that.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
So looking ahead to tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking wet in places across the south, but brighter and colder further north. Let's take a look at the detail. Zooming into the southwest first, cloudy and damp at the beginning of the day. The rain also falling as snow across some of the moors and hills. Rain also sinking southwards across southeast England, the Midlands and East Anglia during the morning, but parts of Kent and Sussex briefly seeing some early brightness. Across into Wales, and skies should be beginning to brighten up, especially in the north, although there may be a few wintry showers around the north and west. Moving up into the northwest of England, and we start the day much colder than of late, but there will be plenty of sunshine around, maybe even a few wintry showers around as well. Across the Pennines, and it'll be a cold start here, perhaps the odd icy patch around, then there'll be plenty of sunshine through, but a brisk wind making it feel quite a bit colder. Scotland getting off to a wintry start, especially in the north, with some frequent snow showers, which combined with the strong winds could give blizzard-like conditions in some places. Northern Ireland also seeing some wintry showers around during the morning, but in between there will be some spells of sunshine, the brisk wind making it feel very cold, especially along the northeastern coast. Looking towards lunchtime, and southern areas should turn increasingly brighter with further wintry showers across the north, feeling much colder for all of us. And that's how the weather's shaping up during tomorrow morning.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Police overreach in Scotland reached chilly new heights over the festive period as a result of Nicola Sturgeon's draconian COVID policies. Earlier in my digest, I brought you this shocking footage from the avant-garde gastropub in Glasgow on New Year's Eve, where around 50 folk, most of them over 60 years old, discovered that having a good time has effectively been criminalised in Scotland after a reported 20 officers stormed the venue.
Just trying to get his coat. No, you'll let him by. Just trying to get Andy's girlfriend's coat. Right, let it take. I'm going.
You know, it's number. You want to get a report them all. You're getting the jail, all right? It's as simple as that. Get the jail. Aye, swear me again, you'll get the jail. It's as simple as that. Don't touch me. You assaulted me 3 times there. Don't you further that. You assaulted me 3 times there.
Yes. She's 75, not a lawbreaker. We're getting put at a pub. Look at the amount of police here.
1 van, 2 vans, 3 vans, 4 vans, 5 vans. We have 6 vans. 6 vans to arrest some old people.
Absolute insanity. Now, Police Scotland said that during the routine visit, they arrested and charged a 63-year-old licence holder who refused to provide relevant licence documentation, and arrested 2 for allegedly physically assaulting and verbally abusing officers. They claimed no arrests were made in relation to COVID guidelines. But that doesn't take away from the shock value of what we've seen play out. And joining me now is Mark Wynne, who filmed that footage that's gone viral for all the wrong reasons. So, Mark, it looked to me like you were just having a great time in the pub. What happened when the police stormed the venue, and what did they tell you they were there for?
go back to stage, right? You're talking about 50 people that are at least 60 years of age, and about 6 people, of which are 1 that were under that age, right? Albeit quite close to that age. These older people paid £40 a ticket to be there. I turned up at 10:20 with my girlfriend, right? We only paid £25 because we weren't there for the food. And it was a fantastic evening. It was really well organised. And then about 11:15, right? So the times I'm going to give you here are completely different to what the papers have said. There were 3 couples up dancing. I was one of them. And, you can't go, guidelines, you're not allowed to dance. But now it's more than 1 metre away from each other. And then 2 WPCs come in and go, no, you must stop dancing. Now, I did, but I didn't move. But the old couple behind me, they were like, no. And they started, having a little conversation with the WPCs. They left, of course, taking photographs of the signs that you've shown on the door. So the question is, was this a targeted pub? Right? And I'd ask everybody that's watching it, to make your own minds up about that one. And then,
and this is because there was a sign on the door that said that the pub would welcome people regardless of whether they want to wear a mask or not.
And, I hardly use Twitter, but my Twitter went mental on the 1st. And every 2 seconds I get a tweet. Now, I've had loads of comments, like hundreds of people that have never been to this pub that are going to go, right? Because
I want to go.
We've got to go. People, coming up from, the south, Scotland, want to come to this pub because, the whole pub is standing up for anybody and everybody is welcome. It's non-discriminatory.
Yeah.
And these 2 WPCs left, and all the times I can give you, I know are correct because I've got them on. I filmed a lot of things while I was in there. And then at 11:03, the first van turned up, right? 4 people came in. Now, the thing I would say about Police Scotland, we had over 40 officers there, right? But only 3 of them caused a major problem. So the other 37 were fine. I mean, I spoke to some of them and they said, we've got no idea why we're here, right? I spoke to one outside who was shaking. He apologized for the whole evening, right? It was absolutely ridiculous. So the first van turns up at 3 minutes past, and that's got another 4 people in. So we're now at 6 officers. They decide they want to do a full investigation of, the venue. They're in the back rooms. They're in the kitchens. They wouldn't come out the kitchens. And then we get another van load come in, right? So I've got a video of another 7 officers on the dance floor. And it's great because you've got all these, I call them older people, right? They're like, shame on you. And, this is terrible. And, there's a couple of the older people with cameras chatting to the police officer saying, this is bang out of order, right? And they were for none of this. And then it just started to accelerate from that. And then I think we got to, what was the time? It was about 11:30, right? 11:30, we get more police coming. And then they're starting to go around some of the tables saying, drink up, you've got to leave, right? Now,
and it's before the bells. Come on, this is New Year's Eve.
But here's the problem, right? Rather than saying the pub has to close, would you please leave? These are the reasons why. It was like they were pointing at the old people, with all due respect to them, and saying, you will be arrested, right? You will be arrested unless you move. Now, the guy, I know you haven't shown, probably for various reasons, the brutality of how he was taken to the ground. His seat was just behind mine on a slightly raised area. And he tried to go back to his seat, right, to get his jacket. Was he going to go and leave? I don't know. But the officer that put him in the big neck hold and took him to the ground, right, George Floyd style, stood right in front of him and refused to let him go to his table, right? Just point blank, refused to do it. So
and he just wanted to get his jacket. I mean, look, I think it is ridiculous police overreach. But for me, Mark, I blame Sturgeon for this because she is the person who has criminalised Scots from having fun. Do you agree?
What I'm going to say is it doesn't matter whether you're Sturgeon, whether you're Boris or you're Mark or whatever. You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. And these guys will never get it wrong. But the problem with all our leaders, our political leaders, is it's their egos that control what they do. So they make decisions because they want to be more powerful. They make decisions because they want to have more control, right? And it's that element of things within them. You know, they're fearful that they're going to be seen to be the wrong person. So they basically keep on instigating things. Now, I'll tell you something. The only reason why we went to that pub, which I've been to a few times, is because my girlfriend and I were concerned this would be the last opportunity as unvaccinated people in Scotland that we could go to a public place, right? Because we can't travel, right? We can't go anywhere. And this next year we've got coming is going to be full of chaos and collapse. And the restrictions we're going to have are going to grow. So we went there as kind of like a kind of farewell, you know, we might not ever get out again. You know, that's exactly the signs. And as I say, it's really concerning, but there's a much bigger picture that sits behind the back of this, you know, because I would never blame the police. It's down to individuals. There were 3 individual officers that were there, right? I couldn't even shame. And their badge numbers are clearly, you know, within the actual videos that went way beyond what is acceptable. You know, the guy that was arrested had 6 of them pinning him down. One had a permanent headlock on his neck. Now, if it had been an older person, they'd probably be dead, simply be dead. And you've got to remember these older people, some of them, with all due respect, are probably on, you know, I don't know, high blood pressure.
And we have to remember, this is people who are just trying to legally enjoy a drink in a pub. Absolutely. It's wrong. And Mark Wynne, I'm so glad that you captured the footage. The rest of the mainstream broadcast media are ignoring your footage, but it doesn't matter because millions and millions of folk all around the world are viewing it on Twitter, seeing what went on, and I'm so glad that you've come here to explain it on GB News tonight. Thank you so much, Mark Wynne. Now, coming up is Prince Andrew's silence on Virginia Giuffre doing him more harm than good. Top lawyer Rad Seeger, who met with Epstein's victims and worked on securing justice for Harry Dunn, believes the Duke could learn some valuable lessons from that case. He'll be here and uncancelled. Next in the media buzz, should Boris Johnson axe green levies to avert a cost of living crisis? My panel will tackle that, and we'll bring you more of the front pages hot off the press too.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world. If
you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
More of tomorrow's news tonight now in the Media Buzz. And a lot more front pages have just been delivered. The Guardian reports critical incidents at several NHS trusts as COVID staff shortages hit. So that's about the isolation period, isn't it? Not about the Omicron. Backlash at masks in schools as cases ease is the front of the Telegraph. It says Tory MPs, one of the government's scientific advisors, charities and parent groups are warning of the long-term impact on children's mental health and said restrictions must be balanced against the risk of COVID. It also reports on the death of the Queen's Lady-in-Waiting, Lady Farnham, at the age of 90. The Daily Express is happy that Boris believes we're on the right path to beating the virus, plus there's calls for VAT to be cut to bring down the price of energy bills. The Times also followed the statement by the Prime Minister that the UK is on the right path to tackle the virus, and they report on the news that Prince Andrew's lawyers hope Virginia Giuffre's unsealed 2009 settlement with Jeffrey Epstein will stop the sexual assault case against the Duke, and we'll be taking an in-depth look at that later on with top lawyer Rad Seeger. The Daily Mail leads on COVID chaos fears as 1 million self-isolate. Commuters, hospitals and businesses are bracing for massive shortages, while head teachers worry children could be turned away at the school gates as up to a quarter of their staff are forced off. Honestly, just cut the isolation period now to 5 days. It needs to happen. And look at that from Andrew Pearce. If Sir Tony Blair had a shred of dignity, he'd turn down the honour. Christine Hamilton will be happy with that. And it's another out of this world front page from the Daily Star. Watch out for cannibals in space. This is the warning by experts analysing potential space voyage issues that astronauts on Mars could quickly turn on each other if they run out of food. My superstar panel back with me, the aforementioned Christine Hamilton, Benjamin Butterworth from the newspaper, and commentator Esther Kraku. Now, Boris Johnson has been urged by a group of backbench Tories to scrap green levies from energy bills to help avoid a cost of living crisis. Writing in the Daily Telegraph, the 20 MPs in pairs urged the Prime Minister and Chancellor Rishi Sunak to use levers we have to mitigate the looming increase. The backbench group, which included 5 former ministers, argued the environmental levies used to fund renewable energy subsidy schemes should be scrapped, potentially shaving £200 off the average household bill. They also suggested scrapping VAT on energy bills and added high energy prices, whether for domestic heating or for domestic transport, are felt most painfully by the lowest paid. I mean, Esther Kraku, it just feels sick to me that we have this cost of living crisis coming and the government still expects us to prioritise net zero. It's so wrong.
And it's the Tory MPs that are leading the backlash against
Good
it.
on
Not
them.
Labour. Not people that are thinking, the people that are meant to...
No, Labour doesn't care about the working class.
The working class, exactly. Yeah. But I genuinely believe, and I'm not saying we shouldn't do our part, but I think this green agenda that Boris has tried to put forward is, 1, laughable, but 2, no one voted you in for this. So we voted in for Brexit mainly. This is not what we asked for. If we're not having a serious conversation with China, Indonesia and India about their pollution levels, I don't think it's fair to continue to squeeze the working and middle classes in this country over what really will have very little impact on our greenhouse emissions, quite frankly.
Christine Hamilton, do you agree with these backbench Tories?
Absolutely. The Green Levy is absolute nonsense. It isn't just Boris Johnson who's been doing it. For 15 years plus, we've been doggedly pursuing this god of net zero. This country produces 1% of global emissions. China produces 30%. We could abolish the entire UK economy and that saving would be wiped out within weeks. And the Asian tigers, who sensibly prioritise economic growth over these virtue signalling things, I mean, it's utterly ludicrous. We've cancelled the North Sea. We won't frack. Our energy prices, gas prices here are 5 times higher than the USA, which does frack. It's an absolute nonsense. And meanwhile, wind farm owners and landlords who have these wind farms on their land are just sitting back getting £1,000 a week, is it? Or is it a day? £1,000 a day per wind farm, per windmill. It's utterly ludicrous. And as Esther said, or you said, it's the people at the bottom end of the scale. I mean, fuel poverty in this country, I think it's... Opinions vary as to whose figures you look at, but at the moment it varies between 3 and 4 million people, which means fuel poverty, which means they're spending at least 10% or more of their net income on energy. Now, that is wrong, and that figure is set to rise.
Benjamin, surely the government cannot justify these green levies anymore. Look at that statistic.
I mean, you know, they could get rid of the VAT, which is about 5% of the
Which was a Brexit promise.
But they're not doing it, like most Brexit promises. Yes. And then they also, they could introduce some kind of support for the.
But what about the green levies? Poverty. Why do you want these green levies? Why?
But the thing is, I mean, the green levies is there to encourage renewable energies and to put the money into that.
Bog off. We've got a cost of living crisis.
One of the best ways to cut people's energy bills is to insulate their homes. That's why insulating Britain is such an important cause. Because, according to research, you could cut £350 off your bill if you insulated your
insulate Britain was something I was firmly leaving in 2021.
Can I just ask, why are you not more concerned that this backlash against it's not being led by Labour MPs? Isn't that more concerning?
But, I mean, there shouldn't be a backlash against net zero from Labour MPs. Because
we're not talking about net zero, we're talking about the green levy.
Net zero is going
during
to
this
destroy
pandemic.
this country. I bet you, I won't be around in 2050, but I bet you we don't achieve it. And if we do, this country will be economically on its knees. It's ludicrous.
When entire, countries as we know them today are underwater, that's a very serious
Show me the proof. You're just like Sky News showing Buckingham Palace flooded and it was all lies, fake news. Now check out this bizarre but kind of cute propaganda video from North Korea.
Cute.
Well, you'll see it. It's sort of cute, showing kids on stage in hand sanitizer and thermometer costumes to help promote COVID measures.
덕방 뉴스 사업을 책임적으로 진행합시다. 알았어.
Now, hilariously, North Korea still claim to have no confirmed COVID cases, which would make this video futile. Or maybe, just maybe, it's because Kim Jong-un is reported to shoot the poor souls who catch the virus dead. Not so cute. Coming up, the crowning moment of the show as I coronate today's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. But next, in Uncancelled, is it time Prince Andrew came out of hiding to give evidence in the Virginia Giuffre case? Top lawyer Rad Seeger will be in the studio to explain why the Duke needs to battle the allegations head-on. But first, here's a look at what's coming up in tomorrow's show.
Coming up on Dan Wootton tonight, is there any hope of saving Brits from a cost of living crisis? Tory MP Craig McKinlay, who's piling the pressure on Boris, will sit down with me. Plus, I'm joined by social media sensation and free speech champion Maya Tusi, as well as GB News stars Nigel Farage and Darren Grimes, who will be sounding off on issues that matter to you. I'll also crown a new Greatest Britain and Union Jackass and break down the day's top headlines with my superstar panel. The Conservative commentator Calvin Robinson, the Daily Star columnist Dawn Neeson, and the author and journalist Rebecca Reed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
But it's time now for Uncancelled. And this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. Now, the new year couldn't have started more badly for shamed and disgraced Prince Andrew, who is tonight coming under intense pressure to testify in a US court. Here's Cameron Walker with the story so far in 90 seconds.
Absolutely, categorically tell you it's never happened. I have no recollection of ever meeting this lady. None whatsoever. The words of Prince Andrew in his now fateful 2019 Newsnight interview. And his recollection of what happened differs to the allegations currently facing him in a civil case in the United States. Virginia Giuffre is suing Prince Andrew for allegedly sexually assaulting her when she was a teenager. Ms. Giuffre claims she was trafficked by disgraced billionaire Jeffrey Epstein to have sex with Andrew. A picture later emerged of them together and his friend Ghislaine Maxwell, who's been convicted of helping to procure teenage girls for Epstein to sexually abuse. Prince Andrew denies all the allegations made against him and claims he has no memory of the photo being taken. Today, a settlement agreement between Virginia Giuffre and Jeffrey Epstein has been made public, which shows she agreed to not sue anyone connected to the late billionaire who could be described as a potential defendant. Prince Andrew's lawyers believe it could release him from liability. Now, top lawyer Rad Seeger has urged Andrew to stop hiding and give evidence in Ms. Giuffre's civil sex case. Mr. Seeger, who's met some of Epstein's victims, was involved in transatlantic talks to try to strike a deal in the US for the family of British teenager Harry Dunn, who was killed when his motorbike crashed into a car said to have been driven on the wrong side of the road. Police here were able to charge US citizen Anne Sekulis for causing Harry's death by dangerous driving. Mr. Seeger believes that case could be a blueprint for how Prince Andrew handles the lawsuit from across the Atlantic.
And Rad Seeger joins me now. Rad, I completely agree with you. I cannot see how the UK government or how the royal family can continue to allow Prince Andrew to avoid testifying, especially when you look at the amazing results that you've achieved in the tragic Harry Dunn case.
Dan, good evening. Thank you very much. Look, I mean, this is an unmitigated disaster for Prince Andrew and the royal family. And something has to give. And I don't quite understand why he's had, the advice that he's had, or why he's taken the decisions that he has. If he's as innocent as he says he is, and let's just remember, he's not charged with any criminal offense at the moment, but if he's as innocent as he says he is, you don't do interviews on Newsnight. You go and speak to the police in New York, and you help these poor victims understand what happened to them. And I've had the honor of meeting many of them. They're all brokenhearted, and they just want answers. So, my position is that, what happens, of course, outside of court, in the court of public opinion, is far more important than what happens inside court. This man's reputation is probably destroyed now. Yeah. But if he wants any way of coming back, we're all forming our own conclusions this evening, but go and help these people.
Well, I've been saying for months, the bloke needs to get on a plane and go to New York and assist the FBI if he's got nothing to hide. But you say, actually, there's another way because of what you've achieved with Sikora and in the Harry Dunn case. In fact, he could testify via Zoom, so he wouldn't actually have to set foot on US soil. Is that right? That could be a possibility.
Well, it appears to be a solution that the authorities here in the UK are willing to contemplate in our case, Harry Dunn's case. And if that's a way forward, then let it happen. But it's about being honest and truthful and being answerable, for your actions. And many of these women who I've met, I'm sorry to say, have implicated Prince Andrew. They say that he was involved. Now, if a way forward, and let's remember, he has immunity, as Anne Sikora had immunity, but look what we can achieve when we get, with your help, Dan, and your colleagues' help in the media, when we get the great British public angry, the pressure becomes unbearable. And it seems to me we've crossed the point of no return. It seems to me with this new year, Andrew's on a downward curve now, and the pressure will become unbearable, and he will have to cooperate with the authorities in New York.
I think he has to, and I think, look, the British media gets a hard time. Especially tabloid newspapers, which I've worked for much of my career, Rad. But actually, it's tabloid newspapers who kept on this story, who exposed Epstein's friendship with Prince Andrew, who pictured them together in Central Park, who first produced the picture of Virginia Giuffre with Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. So I think you're right, actually, the media have played a blinder here and are keeping the pressure on Prince Andrew. Can you just tell me a little bit, Rad, about your meeting with the victims? You say they implicate Prince Andrew. He, of course, has always claimed that he never broke the law.
Look, I don't know who's telling the truth. All I can tell you is I did spend time with some of these women, and what came across was just how devastated they were. Their lives are difficult, and they want accountability. They're entitled to justice, and it doesn't matter whether it's Andrew or anybody else who's ever been involved in what has clearly been a very significant sex trafficking scheme has to face the consequences. And we have to look at this from the victim's point of view. And look what happened to Harry's family. The United States government tried to kick them when they were down. And Dan, the point that you make about the media is so important. And I won't have a bad word said about you guys. Harry's family would be nowhere without you guys. But, Andrew, according to these women, is involved, and he has to head over there in whatever form and at least explain himself. He sat on Newsnight and said he was totally innocent. He remembers nothing of this. Well, let's just go and then close it off. Go and speak to the police in New York. Go and participate in this civil case and let the truth be told there. And then, we might forgive him. But at the moment, we're all forming our own conclusions. And Dan, I don't speak to a single soul who's got a good word to say about Prince Andrew at the moment.
No, absolutely not. And Rad Seeger, thank you so much. Top lawyer. I couldn't agree more with that advice to Prince Andrew. If Secoulis can do it from the comfort of the US, then the very least you can do, sir, is speak to the FBI via Zoom. I think it's a very good point. And of course, Rad Seeger will be keeping on this story, as will I. But it's time now to reveal today's greatest Briton and Union jackass. And with me to reveal theirs, my superstar panel is back with me, Christine Hamilton, Benjamin Butterworth and Esther Kraku. Let's kick off with you, Christine Hamilton. Who is your greatest Briton?
Oh, my greatest Briton is Camilla. Who has
another royal,
another
royal.
She has also been elevated to the Garter, and I think it is absolutely justified. It's a mark of the terrific respect that the Queen holds for her. It will give her her own very elevated position in the event that she ever becomes a widow, and I think it's in recognition of the quiet dignity that with which she has conducted herself over all these very, very difficult years, and the enormous contribution that she has made to charities, to the monarchy. She's a great stabilising issue, and I think that she would be my greatest Briton, and I think she thoroughly deserves the Garter Award, and I'm longing to see her in those wonderful robes and the ostrich feather.
Benjamin Butterworth, your nominee for Greatest Britain.
Well, mine is a woman called April Ashley, who died a couple of days ago. She was one of the first people in the world to have a gender reassignment surgery. She became a Vogue model, and eventually she was honoured by the Queen, so there's a theme here for her services to being transgender. And the reason that I wanted to honour her after her dying is because, you know, she lost her whole career at one point, was constantly in tabloid news and subject to unbelievable abuse in this country. And she refused to ever be anything but herself to the end, and did it with such incredible dignity and popularity. And I'm just in awe of her.
Esther Kraku, your nominee.
Eamon Holmes, for his amazing show this morning. And he's a fantastic addition to the team. And I feel like there is a certain former BBC journalist that may be seething at home, I'm not sure, but the greatest Briton is clearly Eamon Holmes.
Someone's feeling a bit bitter and twisted tonight, right? Esther, you pointed that out over the weekend. Don't know who you're talking about. But yes, the greatest Briton is clearly Eamon Holmes. And if you missed the show this morning, 6:30 a.m. Isabel Webbs is here from 6 to 6:30, and then they join up together between 6:30 and 9:30. It's definitely worth a watch. Very quickly, with our Union jackasses, Christine Hamilton, we know you've picked Tony Blair. We know why. Anything more you want to say, or...?
No, not really, because I've said it all.
You said it all. You said it all.
But I do want to say this would be GBNews' opportunity to salute and honour the veterans who went above and beyond the call of duty because of Tony Blair, lost their lives.
And Benjamin Butterworth, you're on the same theme, but for a different reason.
Well, my Union jackasses are the anti-Blair petitioners.
500,000 now.
That want to stop the Britain's longest-serving living Prime Minister from being honoured as he should. You know, they are Union jackasses, all 500,000 of them.
Esther Kraku, who's your nominee?
Nicola Sturgeon, for turning Scotland, and the time of the year when it should have been joyful and fun, into a COVID hellscape. So thanks for that, Nicola.
Well, look, do you know what? I know Christine and Benjamin are very passionate about the Blair situation, but for me, I've got to go with Esther again. Yeah. I think what Sturgeon has done with those draconian COVID restrictions in Scotland, completely unnecessarily, is so disturbing. And I just want to remind everyone in Scotland, she's trying to scare you. One person in the entire Scottish nation has ended up on intensive care with or of Omicron. One person. Let that sink in. Fabulous superstar panel today. Esther Kraku, Benjamin Butterworth, Christine Hamilton. I'll be back again tomorrow from 9 p.m. Now it's time for Headliners. Good night.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
So looking ahead to tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking wet in places across the south, but brighter and colder further north. Let's take a look at the detail. Zooming into the southwest first, cloudy and damp at the beginning of the day. The rain also falling as snow across some of the moors and hills. Rain also sinking southwards across southeast England, the Midlands and East Anglia during the morning, but parts of Kent and Sussex briefly seeing some early brightness. Across into Wales, and skies should be beginning to brighten up, especially in the north, although there may be a few wintry showers around the north and west. Moving up into the northwest of England, and we start the day much colder than of late, but there will be plenty of sunshine around, maybe even a few wintry showers around as well. Across the Pennines, and it'll be a cold start here, perhaps the odd icy patch around, then there'll be plenty of sunshine through, but a brisk wind making it feel quite a bit colder. Scotland getting off to a wintry start, especially in the north, with some frequent snow showers, which combined with the strong winds could give blizzard-like conditions in some places. Northern Ireland also seeing some wintry showers around during the morning, but in between there will be some spells of sunshine, the brisk wind making it feel very cold, especially along the northeastern coast. Looking towards lunchtime, and southern areas should turn increasingly brighter, with further wintry showers across the north, feeling much colder for all of us. And that's how the weather's shaping up during tomorrow morning.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Hello and welcome. My name is Simon Evans. Welcome to the first Headliners 2022, which is not a sequel to 2020, but a new year entirely in its own right. But before we can begin, here's Polly with the news.
Very good evening to you. I'm Polly Middlehurst with your latest news headlines. In New York today, a 12-page legal document which Prince Andrew's lawyers believe will end the civil sex abuse case against him has been made public for the first time. The 2009 settlement was between Virginia Giuffre and Prince Andrew's former friend, the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The document revealed the terms of a £370,000 payout, and it shows she agreed to release, acquit and forever discharge Epstein or any other person who could have been included as a potential defendant. Prince Andrew's legal team says it voids any claims Miss Giuffre might have against him. The Duke of York has denied any wrongdoing. In other news, the Prime Minister's warning the NHS faces considerable pressure over the coming weeks due to the increasing number of COVID cases. The latest figures show more than 157,000 daily infections were recorded in England and Scotland. Boris Johnson's ruling out a reduction in the self-isolation period to 5 days, claiming the risk of an infectious person returning to work is too high. On a visit to a vaccination hub in Buckinghamshire, he urged everyone who's not yet had their booster to get one.
I just want to make a crucial point to people who are thinking about getting their booster, there are still quite a lot of people who have had 2 jabs but haven't had the third. A third jab really does make a big difference. There are 2 million slots just this week to get your booster, so get boosted now. It can make all the difference in the world. The majority of people who are in ICU, sadly, have not been vaccinated, and certainly the vast majority, about 90%, have not been boosted.
Boris Johnson speaking earlier on today. Now, a 15-year-old boy has been charged with the murder of Zayn Aimable Lina. Zayn, also aged 15, was fatally stabbed in a park in Croydon in South London last Thursday evening. The teenager was arrested on suspicion of murder late on New Year's Day. He's going to appear at Bromley Magistrates Court on Tuesday. Tributes have been paid to a 14-year-old girl who died after being hit by a car in the West Midlands on New Year's Eve. Olivia Kolek's family described her as the brightest star in their lives. A 39-year-old man was arrested on suspicion of causing death by driving while under the influence of drugs. He's been released under investigation pending further inquiries. And just lastly, the Scottish darts player Peter Wright has won the PDC World Championship, beating Michael Smith 7-5 in the final. At Alexandra Palace, Englishman Smith took the lead in the battle, but ultimately it was Wright who fought back. The 51-year-old won 9 of the last 10 legs to become the double world champion. And our congratulations to him. You're up to date. Now let's get back to headliners.
And good evening again. It's time for Headliners, tomorrow's papers tonight. Before I introduce tonight's guests, let's have a stroll through tomorrow's headlines. The Daily Mail leads with COVID chaos fear as million isolate, and a piece by Andrew Pearce saying if Sir Tony Blair had a shred of dignity, he'd turn the honour down. He would turn down the honour. I should get that in the right order. Does he have a shred of dignity? We will be discussing that lately. The Telegraph goes with, we can't jab the whole planet every 6 months. A sudden expression of frustration and mild fury. And to The Guardian, which reports on critical incidents at several NHS trusts as COVID staff shortages hit. Also, Epstein paid Duke's accuser $500,000. National Trust boss says I had death threats in woke row. The Financial Times has gone with a story we will be looking at shortly, that Apple has become the first company to rack up market valuation of $3 trillion. That's added something in the realm of a third to its value over the course of the pandemic. They also have economy recovery faced with burden of political disarray and Brexit friction. The Metro leads with it's eating or heating, a slightly easier conundrum and proposition to understand than the Financial Times, and Duke's final throw of the dice. The Independent has revealed deal Andrew hopes will stop legal case and PM sticks to Plan B COVID restrictions. The Eye goes with NHS leaders warn PM over growing COVID staffing crisis. They like lots of letters on that page. And on to the Express. Boris, we're on right path to beat virus. The Times also has, we're on the right path to tackle virus. That's a fairly mild deviation from the other. And the Mirror leads with secret deal to silence Andrew accuser. Prince claims £370,000 gag signed by Virginia Giuffre. I've never been entirely confident with that. I tell you what, though, I wouldn't mind writing a £370,000 gag. He hopes that will save him from the civil trial. And finally, the Star, who has ever lightened the mood with cannibals in space. The rush to inhabit Mars has been knocked off course after a space boffin warned astronauts would turn cannibal if it all went wrong on the well-named Red Planet. So, good evening once again. We have tonight's guest now. We have the urbane, dilettante and shed-based voiceover artist, I learned this evening, Steve N. Allen. Good evening to you, Steve, and our free-floating discontent, Nick Dixon. This discontent is no dishonourable title to be bearing within the GBNews context.
Urbane one, but I got...
Do you want to be urbane? You're going to have to wear a tie, Nick, I'm afraid. Sorry about that. I don't make the rules. How are you getting on with your shed? I was very pleased to hear that. Yeah.
Carpeted, insulated.
Was it a pre-existing shed, or have you built this from scratch?
The shed was there, admittedly.
But previously smelt of fertiliser and...
Previous owners had a bar in it. You know, some people... It's one of the worst feelings in my life, having to remove a bar from a place.
Tear down a bar and install a workspace. That doesn't sound very urbane, does it, Nick?
No, I'm still just in a little one-bedroom flat, and the exact way you would picture me.
Yeah. We've got a shed, but it's been rotted from the inside out, and I think has proved a home to foxes and other vermin. I think it would need some quite substantial renovations.
Should be a whole show, Shed Chat.
Yeah, we should. The news from the shed. So, our headline stories. The front page of the Mail is once again COVID-based. They've gone with COVID chaos fear as million isolate. And this is, of course, something people are beginning to worry about, that there is a degree of self-isolation going on, which might lead to as much chaos, especially with the schools reopening, as if there were to be a proper lockdown. But there is better news inside. The UK's COVID infections have increased by nearly half, 45%, and Boris Johnson suggested that NHS staff could be moved to plug shortages. That's pretty brutal, isn't it? I'm going to move you to plug a shortage. I think you should be allowed a little bit more dignity than that. But the other side of it is that despite a huge number of 157,000 cases today, that's a rise from 109,000 last Monday, the number of people dying with the virus has actually gone down very substantially, 70% decreased. Only 42 deaths reported in the UK compared to 143 this time last week. Now, I don't want to minimise the pain of any one of those deaths individually, but seen as a statistic, that's a very encouraging sign, and to be honest, probably wouldn't even have alerted anyone to the presence of a pandemic on a previous year. Meanwhile, the number of people being admitted to hospital in London has also fallen, with 314 patients admitted on January the 1st. That's a decrease from 437. So, just to be clear, I'm not saying, see, it was never anything to worry about. Obviously, I understand that this is in no small part, I'm sure, thanks to the largely self-imposed restrictions people adopted over Christmas. And if my experience was anything to go by, anyone who was planning to visit a vulnerable person, an elderly relative, or even just a poorly dog, or even, frankly, someone who just didn't want their freedom to travel overseas compromised by an unwelcome PCR test, cancelled long-anticipated and fully catered social events. Not saw, I'm just saying it happened, and indeed many professional engagements with extreme prejudice. And those of us whose elderly relatives were so thoroughly hermetically sealed in their own homes that they couldn't be persuaded to offer hospitality anyway, found themselves caught in the middle somewhat. Worst of both worlds, no social contact at either end of the scale. But there it is, so be it. That was their choice. It's over now, and no one has any need or justification for visiting their grandparents for another 11 months. With this, good news on the hospital front. Perhaps this is light at the end of the tunnel. I'm going to come to you, Steve. What do you think? Can we have some measured optimism at this point?
Let me ruin some of that optimism by saying we could be seeing a whiff of the Monday effect, because it's also a bank holiday Monday effect. Stats are often less reliable on a Monday. Plus, this is because the people aren't there to report the figures, because they're all at home self-isolating. So that's one of the ways you can get the figures down. Right. If no one can do any tests because they're all staying at home in their shed.
We have plenty of tests in our kitchen, though. There's a test in every room. There's one if you go to the loo. You don't need to scroll your phone or read the back of the Domestos bottle. There's a test you can do while you're sitting in there.
But that won't include the death figures, sure.
No, exactly.
Self-test, but you can't test yourself.
That's what I mean. The death figures shouldn't have the Monday effect, though, should they?
No, I imagine they should.
Oh, they would?
They tend to die in hospitals, and the people who... This is what normally you see those stats slightly lower on a Monday.
But they are comparing Monday with Monday there. Most of those were Monday-to-Monday comparisons,
This is a particularly stark Monday.
Stark Monday. That was the unpopular Bangles B-side, wasn't it? Just another particularly stark Monday. What do you think, Nick? You feeling optimistic?
Yeah, I mean, I saw a stat yesterday on Twitter that said England had the lowest 7-day COVID rate in the UK, which I thought was interesting, despite being the only one that hasn't, brought in additional restrictions, almost as if banning running in the park in Wales doesn't work. You know what I mean? So I thought that was positive. My negative spin on it is that I believe Omicron will continue to be mild, despite what Steve's saying. But it's a bit troubling to me that it took a sort of a mild variant and a backbench rebellion and some investigative journalism from The Spectator just to keep us at this Plan B level, you know, and the government still reserves the right to do a lockdown at any time. Sorry to sort of...
No. I think the thing is, I mean, I think it's probably on brand with this channel, generally speaking, to acknowledge that Boris Johnson has been rather disappointing to people who saw him as a fairly libertarian, or at least not a panicker. For all his other undoubted faults, his various lies and misrepresentations and so on in his former career, he didn't seem like somebody who would retreat to the deepest trench in a given moment.
In a fridge. That's the sign of a man who panics.
Did hide in a fridge. Do you think that was a sign that we could?
Yeah, I've never panicked enough to hide in a fridge.
Might have been a foreshadowing of Pfizer.
Yeah, but him and Indiana Jones in the worst one of the films are the only two people I know who've hid in fridges.
Blasted through the air in a fridge, and it actually saves him. And I think that probably actually sent out a very dangerous signal to a lot of young people who tend to hide in fridges for kicks. And we spent thousands, didn't we, on public messaging in the 70s to persuade children not to hide in fridges, and then Indiana Jones undoes all of that in a single... It was a very, very alarming... Do you remember that moment?
No, it's a little bit before...
It was at the beginning of the third film, I think,
I remember that, but I don't remember this thing in the
4th.
It's a bit before my time.
Oh, you remember that? Don't hide in fridges because the door shuts. Mainly in the 70s, most recreational activities took place either on building sites or refuse dumps.
It's a different
and
time.
Kids, yeah, exactly. There were no screens, you know, and so you had to try and make your own entertainment, and most of that was in abandoned white goods. And if you could get into a fridge and shut the door, you were king of your castle for a little while, but then, of course, the fridge could turn over and you were trapped in it. Or some fancier fridges actually had a sort of marginal locking device which could confuse a small child.
I learned so much on this show.
Yeah. I'm amazed that we've managed to get this far into the series without that being dredged out of my memory. We may be getting towards the bottom of the pit now. Next story, and this is something else that a few papers have covered, more as their sort of banner headline rather than as their main front page headline. MP set to debate Tony Blair's knighthood. According to one or two, I'm not sure who we're going to give this one to, who we're going to credit with, but there are apparently more than 380,000 signatures on a petition to strip him of the honour before he's even received it. I don't know if he'd be stripped of it, would he? They would just cancel the ceremony, I think, rather than actually give it to him and then immediately whip it off again. That would seem unnecessarily cruel. Anyway, fury grows, apparently, from families of Iraqi war dead. Well, you can understand that, certainly. If you read a little further into it, the debate looks less likely, as the petition is, in fact, from Change UK, which is a website which does this sort of thing. It's not affiliated to Parliament. They have their own petition system, and it seems that one hasn't reached the number of signatures which forces them into anything. But Tony Blair, I have to say, is pretty extraordinary. I would like a brief discussion on this. He is clearly held in very high regard by people who book current affairs shows to give a sort of elevated statesman-like view. He remains, to be fair, the only Labour leader to have won an election since Harold Wilson, and the only one ever to win 3 in a row, which is pretty extraordinary. And like Margaret Thatcher, he has an ism, and he still has plenty of ites. And he is also one of the most detested Prime Ministers since Neville Chamberlain, who at least had the good sense not to outlive his own term by more than a few months. He is blamed by left and right for reneging on his promise that things could only get better by instead taking the country into what many regard as an illegal war alongside Satan in blue jeans, George W. Bush, although it remains unclear whether he is more despised for the 179 British lives lost in that conflagration, or the hundreds of thousands of foreign lives which were lost and ruined, and the destabilisation of the entire region. Others regard his completely unprovoked assault on the value of a university degree and his soft shoe shuffle version of the long march through the institutions as at least as pernicious, a move that allowed 1,000 NGOs to bloom, all stuffed with well-intentioned pinko scum. But does this mean he was not great? I would have to acknowledge that he was a substantial Prime Minister. Should he be a unique one among Prime Ministers of such stature to remain unhonoured? Nick, what do you think?
Well, I understand your point. Obviously, it would be perhaps odd not to. And I understand that he was obviously good at winning elections. If you watch that recent Blair Brown documentary, you got a real, on a lesser channel than GB, you got a real sense of these were people, Campbell, Blair, Brown, Mandelson, who were just dedicated to winning, and they were highly competent. If you compare that with the modern Labour Party, it's a very stark contrast. However, the damning side, which I will now deliver, is
Contra Blair.
Yeah, the Iraq War was... So I marched against the Iraq War, and I very rarely march, very rarely leave the house, as you know. But me and many...
You must have been about 12.
No, I was old enough to march.
Right.
I like your confidence that I'm younger, which is good for my reputation. But yeah, I did march in London. It was a massive, massive march. And at the time, I remember an interview with Paxman, a slightly sneering interview where someone was saying to him, you know, the numbers were bigger than the police were claiming. He was like, are you saying the police have lied? But there were huge numbers at the time. My point about that is the way the government completely ignored that did cause a new level of disaffection amongst young people. Call us naive, but the way that 1 million people marching in London was completely ignored.
I think that's interesting. Steve, were you on the march? I mean, this is your side, isn't it? No?
Yeah, no, I didn't go on the march. I was against the concept of the wall, but, you know, marching felt like it would have been...
Marching against concepts, a bit woolly, you felt,
Just the concept of marching. But he's also ruined the centre ground. I think that's the terrible legacy.
He has, hasn't he? It is now a disgrace to be a centrist dad, isn't it? It's something that's... it's a slur. It's almost as bad as turf. And I've never really understood that, because it's obvious that even if they might possibly be misguided, centrists... I mean, they're not, you know, they're not a virulent kind of stain on humanity, are they?
If you speak to civil service type people, they'll say, we would love Blair now because he's competent.
Yeah.
They cite his competence. Although getting into the Iraq war with dodgy intelligence wasn't that competent, was it? One could argue.
No. Do you think, though, that... I mean, I just want to do this because it is my pet project, but... Being determined that 50% of young people should go to university, I don't think he's taken nearly enough stick for that. It was absolutely disastrous.
Terrible idea.
Absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
Ruins both sides of things.
Yes.
Stops you going to do something that you probably could get a good career in, and also if you go and get a degree in one of the sciences, one might certainly remember, it devalues the concept of getting a degree.
I mean, employers have found ways of working around it, but all it means is that 40% of kids who wouldn't previously have gone to university are now 50 grand in debt before they start to earn a living. I think
unemployment stats.
But even for that, I think we would have to say 3 terms as Prime Minister did define a generation, gave a lovely speech after the death of Diana. I mean, these things mount up. He's probably worth...
But he also wants to bring in... Remember, he's been obsessed with ID cards, which have now reared their ugly head again with vaccine passports. So what about Blair's obsession with that?
Yeah, it's fair enough.
That? I am.
I am as well. I don't like his pronouncements, and I don't like the look he's adopted lately as well, with this kind of long hair and slightly lizardy skin. He seems to be he's like a UK version of the World Economic Forum, isn't he? There's a real kind of Davos sort of vibe around him. Sir Keir, on the other hand, current Labour leader, is so unpopular that Jeremy Corbyn is the preferred choice of Labour leader, according to a poll in The Express. Now, The Express, it wouldn't surprise me, could be trolling. They could be just simply... Who has got this one? Has somebody read up on this?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's only 8% that Corbyn's got in this survey. That's hard. You know, who knows what the error bar is as well.
Yeah.
I think it's just more telling us that no one's particularly popular. But they've surveyed people in the Midlands, my Red Wall neck of the woods. I'm from Mansfield. And look, we had a chance to vote for Corbyn if you wanted it back then. And no one wanted it back then.
Don't say no one, though. A lot of people did vote for him. I mean, this is the funny thing with elections, isn't it? They hang in the balance, and then after a couple of years goes by, people forget quite how close it was. Not the last one, of course. The last one, which Johnson came in and just steamrolled with Get Brexit Done. 2019, Theresa May, you know... So 2017, I mean to say, 2017... That was alarmingly close if you were somebody who you considered Corbyn to be a liability, which I hold my hands up. I was among them.
Again, was that Corbyn's work, or was it Theresa May saying, we'll call an election to strengthen my hand, and we thought, no.
Yeah, no, your hand is as good as strong as you deserve to have. Yeah.
Corbyn was a good speaker, and May was in hiding, was what happened. But yeah, it's interesting. The headline's a bit sort of salacious, obviously. Jeremy Corbyn back to replace Sir Keir Starmer, as if he's just coming in off the bench now. But really, it's just a little poll that he got 8% of the poll compared to Ed Miliband getting 7%. So it's not a massive story in that sense. But he does still have some popularity. I've suddenly found myself siding with Corbyn over he was one of the few to vote against Plan B. You know, there was 8 Labour politicians voted against it, and he did as an independent.
Yeah.
So suddenly I'm a Corbyn fan. Basically, I've gone so far right. I've gone full circle now. I'm a communist. That's what's happened, I think.
Yes.
But yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure if it's... I'm joking, guys.
The anti-vaxxers, you know, it's a broad church, isn't it?
Yeah,
there's probably a few Zionists in there shuffling up next to Jeremy.
I felt Piers Corbyn was joking, by the way, when he said that thing about burning the thing. He delivered it as a joke. It's not my legal position, but...
Piers Corbyn is... I mean, if you think it's like an extraordinary... sequence of Jeremy Corbyn is a liability to the Labour Party, but Piers Corbyn is a liability to Jeremy. I remember going into the Fens once to try and find that place where Farmer George, what was his name, Tony Martin, had shot some burglars in the back.
Oh yeah.
And it just fascinated me, that area, because, you know, there's obviously a culture of something more, you know, close to Wyoming or Kansas, where people would self-police and so on. Everywhere you went, they were all like, oh no, that's the next village down the road. That's not from around here. Do you know what I mean? We're all quite normal and conventional, but they're a bit strange down in the next village. I kind of picture the Corbyn family as being a bit like that. You know what I mean?
Right.
There's this kind of,
like,
Piers must have someone. Oh no, I'm not the wacky one.
Yeah,
I'm not the conspiracy theorist with the.
So there's a third one now we don't even know about. Exactly. Even more.
Like there's a third Attenborough, isn't there? And was there a third Cray?
There's a third Gallagher. Yeah, I know.
Yeah. There's always one. We want to track him down, but we have no time at the moment. It is now time for the weather, and that will be followed with commercials. Some commercials, and we strongly advise you to pay attention to those as they are funding the channel. So thank you very much, and we will see you shortly. Cheers.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
So looking ahead to tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking wet in places across the south, but brighter and colder further north. Let's take a look at the detail. Zooming into the southwest first, cloudy and damp at the beginning of the day. The rain also falling as snow across some of the moors and hills. Rain also sinking southwards across southeast England, the Midlands and East Anglia during the morning, but parts of Kent and Sussex briefly seeing some early brightness. Across into Wales, and skies should be beginning to brighten up, especially in the north, although there may be a few wintry showers around the north and west. Moving up into the northwest of England, and we start the day much colder than of late, but there will be plenty of sunshine around, maybe even a few wintry showers around as well. Across the Pennines, and it'll be a cold start here, perhaps the odd icy patch around, then there'll be plenty of sunshine through, but a brisk wind making it feel quite a bit colder. Scotland getting off to a wintry start, especially in the north, with some frequent snow showers, which combined with the strong winds could give blizzard-like conditions in some places. Northern Ireland also seeing some wintry showers around during the morning, but in between there will be some spells of sunshine, the brisk wind making it feel very cold, especially along the northeastern coast. Looking towards lunchtime, and southern areas should turn increasingly brighter, with further wintry showers across the north, feeling much colder for all of us. And that's how the weather's shaping up during tomorrow morning.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
And welcome back to Headliners. Tonight I am joined by Steve N. Allen and Nick Dixon. You need a middle initial, Nick, I think, if you're going to be urbane.
Nick N. Nixon.
Is it Nick N.
No,
Dixon?
it's not. It's J, but...
J, Nick J. Dixon.
Not bad, is it?
I've got a
Like
J.
an author.
J's were big in the 60s when I was born. My dad was a John. That was like pretty much the default
Solid
presumption
Christian
of a name.
names. A better
They've all
time.
gone now, absolutely. It's where the rot set in. Next up is the Juifre case, as I've decided to pronounce it. Some form of file has been unsealed, I believe, Steve. This sounds a bit like a Raiders of the Lost Ark kind of business.
Probably less fun, but the second reference for some Indiana Jones
Raiders
stuff on the show.
tonight's probably, that's just how my brain works, I'm afraid, once it's in.
But yeah, they've unsealed the documents. This is over a decade ago. Guffrey, I believe.
You'd think somebody would touch up the red eye on that photograph by now, wouldn't you? God.
Well, that's a phrase that I probably wouldn't use in relation to that photo. Back then, she made a deal with the then alive Jeffrey Epstein, which covered third parties listed as people that she could end up suing. The Prince's legal team are saying that means she can't bring the case against Andrew, which is an interesting position that I mean, surely you'd want to clear your name rather than, well, you can't sue me because I'm listed under the other people suspected of this.
Yeah.
But he's not actually listed in the document, and she didn't list him. That's a messy one, isn't it? Virginia didn't list Prince Andrew back when this deal was made, before the settlement, the $500,000 settlement was made. So he's not listed in it, so is he protected by it? That will be what the...
I scanned this very quickly, but obviously I never like to become too well informed about these cases, to give you some latitude. But there seemed to be some suggestion that he was within a protected category as a royal, as a member of the royal family, that this was a sort of listed example of the sort of person who might be protected.
Yeah, he lists royalty politicians.
Yeah.
He's certainly high profile, but it still feels like a terrible way of winning a case or not even entering the case.
But anyone who's ever actually worked in the law will tell you that is what 90% of law work is about. I have friends I've studied law and I never pursued it, but I know quite a few people who did and carried on there, and it's extraordinary, especially when you speak to criminal barristers, how many cases are decided on what amount to technicalities, or basically playing your joker at the right moment. Effectively, the system rather than getting to the truth of it and seeing what the law has to say.
And I would have thought a technicality would have been this was a deal that she made with someone who was alive, and I thought your legal status changes when you're dead. I'm now worried about that 2-year contract I've got with that mobile phone provider. I thought if I cark it, the other half doesn't have to keep paying it, but you never know. But yeah.
What do you think, Nick?
Steve's covered the detail of this really well, but the most interesting thing I saw recently was, again, on Twitter, where I get all my information. This Prince Andrew was saying there's no witnesses to corroborate that he was at the Pizza Express. And someone on Twitter had pointed out, he said, if you saw a member of the royal family at Pizza Express, you'd be telling people about it for the rest of your life.
I remember seeing George Michael. Actually, I didn't see him, but it worked out. He was in there with Ridgely. They were still in Wham. This would have been about 1981, and they were in the St Albans Pizza Land. And the rumour went across St Albans it was like the shockwave from a nuclear explosion. It was like instantaneous. There was a large gathering around Pizza Land itself. Rumour had it that the whole back section of the restaurant had been roped off into a VIP area. Because George, I think, was a Watford lad, wasn't he? Oh. And a very down-to-earth fellow by all accounts, and would quite often visit his father's or his uncle's Cypriot restaurant or whatever as well. Anyway, I'm just saying, George Michael,
Right, so
that
George
was enough.
Michael went nuclear.
So Prince Andrew
so
has
someone
to be the same.
surely would have seen it. So I'm not alleging anything, but it's just an interesting point, isn't it?
It's funny as well, isn't it, that not even anyone who served him, seems to be able to remember. He doesn't seem to be able to remember or find anyone from that. unless perhaps they have been got at by the FBI.
He is less recognisable than George Michael, to be fair.
We move on to that is true. He is actually quite easily missed. We move on to a story. I'm just hunting through my pages. I've got it on the FT, which is an unusually sort of financialised and city square mile based story, but it is a real landmark. Apple becomes the first company to rack up a market value of $3 trillion. Now, I remember quite clearly, because I present a show on another radio programme, which is a sort of comedy economics thing. I remember when there were the five big Silicon Valley companies were hovering between $500 billion and $1 trillion, and we were waiting to see which one would get beyond the trillion for the first time. The others obviously being the Facebook, Alphabet, which owns Google and so on, and Microsoft. And that's four, isn't it? Apple, who's it? Apple, Microsoft, Facebook, Google, and whoever the other one was anyway.
Lycos?
It wasn't Lycos, no. I really should be able to remember that. That will come back to me shortly. Anyway, now, like 3 years later, they're on $3 trillion. It's absolutely extraordinary, and that has been during the pandemic. Now, you could understand... Oh, Amazon, of course, that's the other big one, Amazon. And you would immediately understand why they would do so well under a pandemic, because obviously everyone can't shop in the normal manner. But Apple, it's a luxury good. This should be a time where people should be thinking, I haven't quite got the money to upgrade my iPhone this year. You know, better wait until I'm back off furlough. It seems not. What is going on?
Go on. The only thing that bothers me about this, it's maybe not as sophisticated as your point, but this is like a band getting famous after it's already had its best albums, because really, Steve Jobs was the creative era of Apple.
Well, I would say Jonathan Ive.
Oh, really? Yeah, working with Jobs.
Designer, yeah.
But, you know, that was the great creative era. Now Tim Cook has just been very good at the stock price and the financial side of it.
They say very good at controlling supply lines, at maintaining, you know, functionality at every stage, which is, of course, you know, the boring stuff that actually makes companies work in the long run, isn't it?
But a lot of the share price is also linked to what they'll plan to be doing in the future with AI and who knows what else.
Driverless cars, apparently. Yeah. I mean, the other big company that's done well recently is Tesla, but they have yet to produce anything in the realm of sales, you know, to support the ambitions, the aspirations that people seem to have for them. I do find this stuff interesting because you just keep thinking sooner or later. I mean, it's not a bubble. I'm not saying they're not worth it. It's not all on bluff. Obviously, they're very good products, but how extraordinarily huge can these things go? Do they just kind of enter a new paradigm and you have to forget about the old one?
Well, possibly, but I don't think it's a good one. I mean, I understand, look, if we're all living under communism, no one would have invented the phone. But you've got to have some companies with a big lump of cash so they can do some R&D. But you get to the stage of $3 trillion, they'd better invent faster than light travel.
Yes.
I mean, that money maybe should be in a couple of other companies as well.
Well, you have to say that there has been an extraordinary amount of sort of tinkering with the cosmetics of communications in the last few years and not so many huge breakthroughs. But we will come to something along those lines a little bit later. In the meantime, a massive rise in the number of young people misusing that technology, possibly some of it Apple, no doubt not exclusively, to visit incel websites. Nick, for some reason they've asked me to come to you with this one.
Yeah, a little bit insulted. Not an incel, of course. I had a very beautiful girlfriend merely months ago.
You better explain what that means, because some of our viewers probably...
So incel, it means an involuntary celibate, which is a young man usually who struggles to get anywhere with women, and it's not really his choice.
Right.
Contrasted with the MGTOW, which is men going their own way, which is men who have, by choice, simply given up on the whole shebang and said it's too much hassle with divorce laws and custody battles. So this is obviously a very serious story because the story is massive rise of use of incel sites that call for women to be raped, and it's saying that there's lots of violent language on here, and there's some actual violent incidents. There have been shootings and things like that.
What, are named individuals calling for people to be raped, or is that a...
This is saying that, well, it cites some examples of people who've said that on the forums. I don't know if they have their actual...
That must be,
some of them are
it's
actually
illegal, is it not? Would that not be illegal?
Yeah, you think so? You think it would be hate speech? I mean... Well, one of them was this guy, Jake Davison, he's already shot 5 people in Plymouth, that guy.
Right, yeah.
He had said that all women should be raped. So there's a very nasty side to the incel world. So I definitely don't want to be defending violence, obviously. But there is a little bit of an issue where the mainstream media tends to talk about incels as if they're all terrorists.
Yeah.
In the same way, it'd be very inappropriate to do it about any group. You know, the idea that there's lots of incels that are just young men that are struggling, that become nihilistic, that are struggling, and they're on the internet talking to each other. The vast majority of them aren't violent. They're just
a lot of them are like Sid the Sexist from Viz, aren't they? Just a lot of mouth and trousers, basically.
Right.
You know,
and you see the way people like Jordan Peterson have done so well. It's because he's he's given some guidance to young men. Young men are desperately in need of guidance. Obviously, it's terrible when they go down this path and they start to become violent or rabidly misogynistic, but I don't think they should be necessarily all condemned in the way that the media likes to do.
I've just managed to lower my my stool. Sorry, while you were speaking there. Hopefully I can get that sorted out. While we move on, did you have any thoughts on the incels, Steve?
Well, I was going to say, this story shouldn't be about condemning the incels, which is different to condemning the websites. A website shouldn't be hosting content like that.
No.
The DNS provider is this Cloudflare that's had some issues with hosting other websites that people should think they take down. You've got to have a responsibility. I know there's the argument tech company versus publisher, but at some point, if you are in charge of some servers that have this kind of hate on it, you should do something. Might not be shut it down, could be filter it, find a way. I'm in favour of tech solving problems.
Maybe you just arrange, for a few blow-up dolls to be delivered to a handful of addresses, and you could possibly just alleviate the whole. I shouldn't be so flippant about it. It is obviously very serious, and it is worrying that this kind of thing should be happening now, because you feel like there is a shift, isn't there, in society? I think a lot of us obviously are aware that we live online a lot more. A lot of parents are very anxious about what constant social media use and screen time is doing to their kids. This feels like it's the sharp end of one of those kind of calculations. That these people are, to some extent, perhaps they see themselves at any rate as the victims of an emerging new transactional relationship between men and women.
Yeah, it's very complicated. It's the online thing, like you said, but it's also just a collapse of marriage. The realities of the global dating marketplace is one of their big complaints, where suddenly it's like a Pareto principle where 20% of men can get all the women, and so there's a supply and demand thing where women could, it's more in favour of women. So they can come to some very nihilistic conclusions, which obviously is not the way to go.
No, it's a very sad situation. We have a slightly more old-fashioned sad situation now, the heating crisis, which does feel like something I've experienced of various winters throughout my life, but this one really does seem to be quite stark, Steve.
Yeah, it's the Metro scaring us with their headline, eating or heating. Just for the record, I'll go eating.
Yeah.
Just because I can wear a jumper, and if you don't eat, that jumper won't fit. But the energy bills to rockets, 46% in April is the prediction of some experts. They've been running the numbers. And then 20% in August. And just to terrify us more, you don't add those numbers together, I imagine. It's compound, isn't it? It'd be 20% of the 146%.
Yeah.
75.2% would be a compound increase. It's all going to slap.
Are you going to be able to heat your shed? That sounds like that's a very high-risk investment.
It was the stupidest thing I've ever done. Thankfully, it's flammable. But so the actual people part of us will be complaining, going, well, this is ridiculous. I'm not going to get that second holiday, or, oh, my underfloor heating will be a stupid error. The shed might not be that wise. It's more about the 4 million people who are in fuel poverty. This could add another 2 million to it.
Wow.
That's the big issue.
And actually, it's not remotely funny to be without heating during the winter, is it? It's horrible. I mean, that used to be, I know, like during the Gulag era and that sort of thing, that was the thing that people would speak about as the most horrific aspect of it. They would often have to endure Russian winters without fuel. That was enough of a punishment. What do you think?
No, it's worrying for me. I mean, I don't want to fuel the people that claim I'm an unsuccessful comedian on Twitter, but for some of us, the prospect of rising bills is quite worrying. So, yeah, it is worrying. And, what someone suggested here, former Education Minister Robert Halfon, that the environmental tax is at 25% of our energy bills, so we could cut those. That could be a conservative idea, to cut tax. Crazy idea, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, actually, I mean, I wouldn't disagree with you. We're sitting on the other side of the fence, because there's a time and place for a green tax. I'm all for finding ways to fund renewable energies, but it might be time to reduce it if we're about to send 2 million people into fuel poverty.
It's extraordinary, actually, how many incidences there are of this, where well-intentioned taxation measures are taken to try and change public behaviour, and all they do is punish the poorest.
Right.
It's like the same thing happened with the sugary drinks, right? Sugary drinks, or just generally sugary foods. You kind of go, right, we're going to try and stop people from drinking 16 teaspoons of sugar, and all you do is like beat up single mums who are trying to raise 3 pestering kids on a meagre salary. Anyway, on that cheerful note, we're going to go for another break. Join us in about 3 or 4 minutes for the final third.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
And welcome back to part 3 of Headliners. With me are comedians Steve N. Allen and Nick Dixon. Now, the EU have out-EU'd themselves this time, haven't they, Nick? This is a story about green energy.
Yeah, this one's in The Guardian. Fury as EU moves ahead with plans to label gas and nuclear as green. Brussels faces backlash and charges of greenwashing after publishing draft proposals on New Year's Eve.
I mean, they clearly are green. Look at the picture.
Definitely
overwhelmingly green.
Yeah, it's this greenwashing. It's the idea they're basically claiming that nuclear and gas are green, and the more hardcore green people are saying no, they're not. Austria's climate action minister says that they're trying to get them in there but claims they're harmful to the climate and environment and destroy the future of our children. I always get a bit suspicious of that kind of hyperbole, but because I'm a bit confused. I'm a layman on this because it's not I'm not that interested in the end of the world and all that through the collapse of the ecosystem, whatever. But I tend to trust Elon Musk. He says we shouldn't be closing nuclear and we should actually they're really safe and we should be sticking with. He says it's all about fission, not fusion. But some disagree and say that.
What do you think, Steve?
I like the idea of nuclear. It's not trendy within the eco-friendly.
Wow. No, I agree with you. It is green by the standards, on the criteria that they're concerned about, which is global warming. It is undeniably green. There's no question about it. The problem is what you do with the refuse. That's another. But that is a slightly separate issue, which is not the one that is COP26 and so on talking about, right?
If you're aiming for low carbon, I think you might need as a bridge energy, nuclear. It doesn't need to be the solution forever, but it doesn't feel that right now the totally renewable low carbon ones are the best option. This is more about nomenclature. This is just about calling it green. That then gives it some green related.
What they need to do is have shades of green, isn't it? I mean, that wouldn't be unreasonable, would it? We already use shades of green to show like how prevalent something is across on a map or something.
Scale.
I see. So totally green would be solar or wind, I guess, or possibly just
Greta Thunberg.
Jumpers.
It's a picture of
jumpers
Greta
and
Thunberg
jogging.
at one end.
The
other end is like Trump or something.
How dare you, as you go from green into red, But I honestly think, gas is not that green, especially if you're getting it from Putin. That's another issue as well. Speaking of the Iron Curtain, Steve, someone crossed into North Korea this week from the south. That is a reversal of the normal pattern. What's going on there?
It's a bit like the film The Rock, isn't it, when they had to break into Alcatraz.
Right.
Somehow we managed to have someone who they think may be a gymnast. Little side note, I never understand why these countries that tend to not want people to escape train people as gymnasts so well.
Gymnasts, madness.
You're making it hard for yourself. Don't leave trampolines near the border. But a while ago, 2 years ago, escaped to South Korea, and now has apparently escaped back. This is a terrible time for the South Korean Tourist Board.
Is it like Miller's Crossing? You remember that old movie where the gangster kind of pretends to go over to the other side, but actually he's just infiltrating them? And I mean, I've spoiled it for anyone, but it's 30 years old now. Great movie, though.
Brilliant movie. I'm surprised to hear it in this context. But yeah, man, the fact that he went back into North Korea, he must have had a really good reason. You know, what did he leave behind?
Left the hob on.
Right, you've gone back into North Korea. And the other amusing part to me, mildly, is that it points out that North Korea hasn't confirmed any COVID infection. So hats off to them on that. They've really nailed zero COVID. I totally, for one, believe them.
It's Trump's don't do as much testing theory. It pays off.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Zero.
It is conceivable that they have very low COVID. I mean, they would be capable of sealing it off to a much... the Chinese numbers are still pretty low, and that's where it started. That's alarming enough in itself. OK, next story. The government has blown £14.7 billion of public money on wasteful projects. Well, frankly, I regard pretty much everything they do as wasteful, but this is to do with crony contracts, duff deals, and other. I think there's some moaning about the Westminster wine cellar. Research based on official figures. Is this something we can trust, Nick? Is it meaningful, or is it just whinging? Well, it is frustrating. I mean, I wish Leo was here to rant about Boris's dodgy contracts that he's always shouting about. But it is a case of that. And yeah, some examples. Great. £73,000 spent stocking the Westminster wine cellar. 30 million COVID test vials to Matt Hancock's mate in the pub landlord, whatever it was. Yes. And a £122 million deal for medical gowns that failed safety standards. So just to ratchet up the outrage, the Mirror here compares it to other things. The 14.7 million could have bought, paid the combined salaries of 60,000 nurses, 65,000 teachers, 77,000 police, or 100,000 comedians. Added one of those. With all those nurses and teachers' salaries, they've sort of depressed the story somehow, haven't they? You just feel whatever. If they said we could have had like a space shark or something.
For some people, that's really riled.
A nuclear powered.
Mirror readers are really riled up by that, Simon. Unless you're not with your cold.
No, with my disregard for increasing the public sector evermore. Was it 70 grand on the Westminster cellar? That sounds quite modest, to be honest, doesn't it? If you think who's going to visit that. But I do think, was it millions on gowns that don't work? Someone should have spotted that a bit earlier in the process.
122 million.
Yeah.
Prototype. Yeah. Test it. And the idea that Matt Hancock's local pub landlord, surely he should be the one in charge of sorting out the wine cellar. There's a bit of a second.
Yes.
But I love the idea that he was brought in to do these COVID test vials. They must have thought, he's got a lot of glassware.
Yeah.
He knows he's let's give the huge 30 million quid contract.
That's the kind of lateral thinking that, sadly, we lost Edward de Bono last year. We could have asked him whether it qualified. A nuclear fusion reactor, this we've got to mention earlier, doesn't get here thrown together this show. A nuclear fusion reactor in China has set a new record for a sustained high temperature after running 5 times hotter than the sun for more than 17 minutes. So that feels like the temperature is the achievement there rather than the long lifespan of that achievement. 17 minutes, 5 times hotter than the sun. Obviously, there are still a few dials to be tweaked, but according to state media, that has been achieved by China. What do we think?
Impressive, 5 times the temperature of the sun, 3.2 times the temperature of a McDonald's apple pie.
Yeah.
These are high temperatures that we're dealing with. The time's actually quite...
How about a leather seat left in the sun in a car?
Yeah, even the steering. The time's actually quite impressive as well, because it's relatively easy, put that in quote marks, to get something hot in a flash.
Yeah.
But to sustain it for that long, it does take us a step towards being able to have fusion. The Experimental Advanced Superconducting Tokamak, which the acronym is EAST. I think they started with the acronym and worked backwards.
Yes, I suspect so, yeah.
But it aims to make a little bit of science. It gives you the opportunity to get a couple of protons, a couple of neutrons, bang them together so hot that they form a plasma. You end up with a little helium nucleus.
This is one of the nice things about it I read a report about it that didn't really emphasise this, but we're running out of helium as well. And so we get some more helium out of this as well.
Because helium's really great. It's able to become a really cold temperature because they're just monoatomic. The atoms don't need to do anything. So you can get really cold. It's used to cool quantum computers, and we use it in kids' balloons.
Yes,
People are idiots.
that's fantastic.
And then it leaves the planet. That's the problem with it.
Yes, absolutely. We can go and get it on a spaceship once we've got a fusion reactor.
Yeah,
we'll go out with a big net. So is this... Because I have seen a video... Sorry, I'll bring in a second, but I have seen a video where they were... I was watching something on YouTube to try and understand it, and it feels like they are building huge... it looks like CERN, you know, the particle accelerator, massive magnet that apparently could lift up an aircraft carrier with this single magnet. And then there's a little tweak in the technology that renders all of that redundant and obsolete, and you have to move on to the next one. You know what I mean? There's this constant... I don't know. What is your...
No, I just realised my contribution is not on that level or on Steve's level. I mean, call me a Luddite. I just feel the sun's hot enough. My concern... And I'm a bit confused as well, because Musk said we don't need fusion, we need fission, and now China's doing fusion. And I'm a little bit worried that China's doing it. I always think, China, do you have to? You know, we've just had this virus they came up with in that lab, and I'm like, it says the ultimate aim of developing the artificial sun device is to deliver near limitless clean energy. Great in theory, but you know it's just actually going to end up blowing up the world, don't you?
Well, the main problem with it at the moment is that it creates, and it actually uses more energy than it creates, and it will do for some time. People who've worked in the nuclear industry say that for the last 50 years, nuclear fusion has always been 50 years away. Always. It's been it's the steadiest horizon that's ever existed. But on the other hand, you know, that's what you have to do. And even in the early days of steam, it was actually mainly the problem was containing the high temperatures necessary. It's always those kind of territories that are...
I love the idea it's always 50 years away. It's like the increasingly mad Corbyn brother that we never meet.
Now, the Times has the revelation that during the Second World War, British teenagers were being trained to kill in case of invasion. Funnily enough, my father, who was born in 1930, he was recruited as a sort of courier during the Second World War, and he didn't know he was allowed to talk about it until he saw a documentary about this in the 2010s, and he decided he would share that with me. They used teenagers and kids quite liberally, I believe, on the home front. I can't imagine that kind of thing working today. But, Nick, what have you got on this?
Yeah, this is in the Times. Details of a secret civilian army of British teenagers who were trained to kill during the Second World War have emerged in research. So, like you say, they were sort of sworn to secrecy, but then later people did come out with it. Among them was Irene Lockley from South Milford, North Yorkshire. Before her death, she revealed to her daughter, Jenny, how she'd been trained to kill and maim and cause as much damage to the enemy as possible.
Wow.
Imagine your mum coming out with that.
Yeah.
I mean, that is... I mean, my mum's president of the WI, she probably could do some damage, but...
Knitting needles.
But yeah, so it's pretty... And then, it's fascinating stuff. It says she disclosed how she and other family members were taught how to derail trains, make Molotov cocktails and garrote and many other skills. Sounds quite cool, but the sinister part to me is when this guy, Andrew Chatterton's written a book about it, and he said that teenagers tended to make good recruits as they were naive enough to carry out actions without thinking too much about the consequences, as well as being fit and active. So it's a bit of a Jason Bourne thing. They got the cool skills, but were they being used?
Well, this has long been understood by various African warlords, isn't it, who recruit kids terrifyingly young, and actually, you know, it's quite quick. It's quite easy to get them to administer justice at the end of an AK-47 at a certain age.
It must make it harder to make them eat their greens. I can't help but think making your kids, you know, be able to kill with one hand, harder to discipline.
That photograph, though, is impressive. I mean, they look lean, they look healthy, they look like they can handle themselves with those farm implements. I mean, I would like to see a bit more of that in our modern-day kids. I don't know whether we can create... I know all the menaces that kids currently confront, and things like climate change, obviously the pandemic, they're all very large-scale, conceptual and hazy, aren't they? I think they need the threat of an actual physical invasion in order to get back up on the balls of their feet a little bit more. Anyway, very interesting story in tomorrow's Express. A 2,000-year-old model of the solar system has been described as the oldest example of an analogue computer. Is it a new discovery, Steve?
No, they found this years ago. And it says archaeologists have been stunned for years by what's been described as the world's oldest analogue computer. So why are we hearing about it now? Well, when you think about archaeologists, the timescales they work on, this is actually pretty darn snappy.
When was it dug up?
Well, they found it, a couple of years ago. They've been working on this. It's known as the, I'm going to say it wrong, I'm sure, Antikythera mechanism. It's a 2,000-year-old ancient Greek hand-powered orrery. which is, if you've seen the film Pitch Black, a little model that models the way the solar system works.
But did they know that the solar system had the sun at its heart in those days, or were they trying to make a model that worked?
I think you'd have to, because the only way you could have a physical mechanism...
Well, no, they did have models of how the solar system was supposed to work pre-Copernican, but they were absurdly complex. That was the thing about it.
I think mathematically you can describe it, but to actually make a thing that moves like that. But these days, we just hang it over a kid's bed and call it a mobile. But what I like about it is ancient Greeks managed to do this.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, 2020...
Pre-Christian, even.
Go and have a look on YouTube. Some idiot will be all angry about the flat Earth.
Yeah.
How have we gone backwards?
Well, that's the question. I mean, that's like the Graham Hancock Atlantis theory. You know, the idea that we had these sophisticated civilizations, but because they relied on technology and everything, they all collapsed, whereas nomadic tribes survived, and that's us now. I don't know if you've ever heard that.
We don't. But the angry people are using a phone that's got GPS on it whilst ranting about the fact we're not a sphere. That bothers me.
It is a shame. If you watch Carl Sagan's Cosmos, he deals with it very adequately. That's all we have time for tonight. Thank you very much for watching. My guests have been Steve N. Allen and Nick Dixon. I've been Simon Evans. I hope I'll see you again tomorrow. Thank you very much. Good night.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
So looking ahead to tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking wet in places across the south, but brighter and colder further north. Let's take a look at the detail. Zooming into the southwest first, cloudy and damp at the beginning of the day. The rain also falling as snow across some of the moors and hills. Rain also sinking southwards across southeast England, the Midlands and East Anglia during the morning, but parts of Kent and Sussex briefly seeing some early brightness. Across into Wales, and skies should be beginning to brighten up, especially in the north, although there may be a few wintry showers around the north and west. Moving up into the northwest of England, and we start the day much colder than of late, but there will be plenty of sunshine around, maybe even a few wintry showers around as well. Across the Pennines, and it'll be a cold start here, perhaps the odd icy patch around, then there'll be plenty of sunshine through, but a brisk wind making it feel quite a bit colder. Scotland getting off to a wintry start, especially in the north, with some frequent snow showers, which combined with the strong winds could give blizzard-like conditions in some places. Northern Ireland also seeing some wintry showers around during the morning, but in between there will be some spells of sunshine, the brisk wind making it feel very cold, especially along the northeastern coast. Looking towards lunchtime, and southern areas should turn increasingly brighter, with further wintry showers across the north, feeling much colder for all of us. And that's how the weather's shaping up during tomorrow morning.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview Channel 236.
On Sky, we're Channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Tonight on Farage, is net zero failing as a policy? Energy bills are rising and a rebellion against these charges is beginning to build. I'll also talk to Dr. Robert Malone, a man who was one of the inventors of the mRNA vaccine and who has just been suspended, in fact banned, by Twitter. We will find out why. And joining me on Talking Pints, the Reverend Steve Chalk, somebody that runs schools in this country. I'll ask him, what does he think about mandatory face masks? But first, the news.
Good evening, I'm Polly Middlehurst. In New York, a 12-page legal document, which Prince Andrew's lawyers believe will end the civil sex abuse case against him, has been made public today. The 2009 settlement was between Virginia Giuffre and Prince Andrew's former friend, the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The document revealed the terms of a £370,000 payout to her, and it shows she agreed to release, acquit and forever discharge Epstein or any other person who could have been included as a potential defendant. Prince Andrew's legal team says it voids any claims Ms Giuffre may have against him. The Duke of York has denied any wrongdoing. In other news today, the Prime Minister's warning the NHS faces considerable pressure over the coming weeks due to increasing COVID cases. The latest figures show more than 157,000 daily infections were recorded in England and in Scotland. Boris Johnson is ruling out a reduction in the self-isolation period to 5 days, claiming the risk of an infectious person returning to work is too high. On a visit to a vaccination hub in Buckinghamshire earlier on, he urged everyone who's not yet had their booster to get one.
I want to make a crucial point to people who are thinking about getting their booster. There are still quite a lot of people who have had 2 jabs but haven't had the third. A third jab really does make a big difference. There are 2 million slots just this week to get your booster, so get boosted now. It can make all the difference in the world. The majority of people who are in ICU, sadly, have not been vaccinated, and certainly the vast majority, about 90%, have not been boosted.
The Prime Minister speaking earlier on today. Well, in other news, tributes have been paid to a 14-year-old girl who died after being hit by a car in the West Midlands on New Year's Eve. Olivia Kolek, her family described her as the brightest star in their lives. A 39-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of causing death by driving while under the influence of drugs. He's been released under investigation pending further inquiries. And ministers are being urged to bring in a new law that would guarantee all workers 2 weeks of paid leave after a bereavement. The SNP's Patricia Gibson is bringing forward a private member's bill to Westminster. She says it would give people time to grieve without worrying about financial pressures. That's your news update. I'm back in an hour. See you then.
Good evening and a happy new year to everybody. I'll begin with a few predictions. The first half of this year is going to be absolutely dominated by the cost of living crisis. Yes, inflation is back. Taxes will be going up in the spring. But the big one is going to be energy bills, where millions of people, and I mean millions of people, are likely to struggle to be able to pay them. And I sense there is a bit of a rebellion building. I've been banging on for 10 years or more about the extent to which our electricity bills are 20 to 25% higher than they should be because we're subsidising big global businesses that build wind farms, and we've also been subsidising rich landowners that put wind turbines on their land. That's just part of the reason for that subsidy. That is now, at last, I wish I wasn't always so far ahead of it, but that is at last becoming a story. We still have 5% VAT on our heating bills. That could be removed as we've now got Brexit, and yet that isn't really happening. But within the Conservative Party, there is a rebellion beginning to build. Pressure on Boris Johnson for a U-turn on his net zero policy. Labour, well, as an opposition party, they have asked for the 5% to be scrapped. Nice to see they are finally embracing a little bit of Brexit, but they're making no real impact. Interestingly, Reform UK are now on the rise, and I'll talk more about that later in the show. So the cost of living crisis, I think, is going to be the dominant issue of our times for the next at least 6 months. After that, well, I'm predicting that COVID will ease, that actually we're learning to live with it, that Omicron, perhaps in a funny sort of way, is a bit of a blessing. And it's at that moment that we'll start to look at the National Health Service, I think, in a very different way. We know that the waiting list for procedures is approaching 6 million. There is absolutely no way the NHS is ever going to be able to catch up with that. And I think a big debate on that, a big debate on the money we pump into it. And I sense and seen already in some opinion polls that confidence in the way the NHS is run is beginning to fall quite sharply. And that's very, very dangerous for the government, as John Major learnt back in the middle 1990s. And finally, on Boris and Brexit, well, the good news is that Brexit is now a settled issue. It really is. The war is genuinely over. An Ipsos Mori poll today showing only 24% of people would vote in a referendum to rejoin. It's done. It's over. And let's give credit to Boris Johnson. Give him credit for actually having the courage to back Brexit, for managing to unite a very split Conservative Party, for winning the general election in 2019 on a Get Brexit Done message. But here's the problem. The deal was never quite as oven-ready as he promised. There is much more to do. Northern Ireland is in a very difficult constitutional situation with perhaps even the threat of some form of sectarian violence coming back. The fishing industry, frankly, has been dealt the most awful hand. And in terms of regulation, entrepreneurship, we're just not doing the right things. And I have to say, I think Boris Johnson was the right man for 2019. I don't think he's the right man now, either for this or many other issues. And I would be surprised, very surprised, if he was still here this time next year. But we'll see. They're my predictions. But what I can tell you for certain is that there is quite a problem building in the Red Wall. Those seats, especially in the Midlands and the north of England, many of which had been Labour for decades. I mean, some going back to the 1920s, that the Conservatives took on the back of a Brexit message, on the back of an immigration message in 2019. But now, I think rising to the top of the agenda for the moment is the issue of energy. I'm joined by Lee Anderson, Conservative Member of Parliament for Ashfield. Lee, a Labour convert to Conservatism, you won that seat of Ashfield, and well done you for doing it. But right now, we see a government that won't take off the 5% VAT on heating bills, despite it being a Brexit promise to do so. We see a government pushing for heat pumps, which I suspect many in your constituency and others simply can't afford. We see an all-out push towards net zero. We see big subsidy put on top of our electricity bills. I mean, Lee, you're not really a Conservative. You're almost like a Green Party member now, really, aren't you?
Well, I've never been in the Green Party, Nigel. Unfortunately, I was in the Labour Party for many, many years. But, you know, it's good to know that you were 10 years ahead of the curve on these predictions. But let me tell you, myself and the blokes I used to work down the pit with in the 80s and 90s, we were 35 years ahead of this curve. We knew when the pits were closing, when we were shutting them all down in the 80s and 90s, we knew this day was going to happen. And we've sort of sleepwalked in this. So I don't think it's fair to blame the current government. It's been successive governments over the past 40 50 years that's allowed this to happen. And it is a problem, Nigel. It's a very big problem. And
I take that, Lee. It's a fair point. It's a fair point.
Really start to notice in their bills.
We import coal. We import natural gas for reasons that are absolutely beyond me when we've got stacks of it here in this country. But it is the rush towards net zero. It is the absolute belief in wind energy. I mean, these are the hallmarks of Boris Johnson's government, and there appears to be a reluctance to do anything about rapidly rising bills. And that puts you under enormous political pressure, doesn't it?
And so it should do, Nigel. That's my job, to be under that pressure from my constituents and to be held account. Now, you know, it's not very windy in the North Sea at the moment, is it? And you're quite right, we're reliant on gas from Scandinavia. And you're quite right in saying that we've got plenty of gas and oil in this country. And I'm of the mind, I'm in the camp that believes that we should be looking at alternatives and being self-dependent in this country, you know, even if it's just a short-term measure while we transition to, well, look, nobody disagrees with the journey the government is trying to get us on. We all agree that we've got to save the planet, we've got to do much better, we've got to be greener, we've got to leave the planet in a much better condition than when we arrived. But it's just, I think it's the pace and the cost that really, really bothers people. Look, if we're going to burn fossil fuels, which we are, we're burning coal, we're using gas, we're actually accepting that that's okay to do, but we're not accepting that it's okay to extract in this country. And
well,
I think
know.
That's a little bit hypocritical.
I know.
Get it out of the ground here.
No, and that would provide jobs, and I get that, and I fully understand that. Lee, finally, Boris Johnson has U-turned on many issues since he became Prime Minister. Are there enough of you on the Conservative backbenches, and are these poll figures that were out this last weekend showing Labour 16 points ahead in the red wall constituencies, is this enough to get this government to rethink its plans?
Well, I'll tell you what, Nigel, if Labour is 16 points ahead in Ashford, I'll show my backside in Tesco window. That's absolutely but it's midterm. You know, we do have these blips. You know, every single government has these blips. We're 11, 12 years into a government now. It's bound to happen. We've had a pandemic. We've got a bit of a cost of living crisis with fuel bills going through the roof. You know, he's had a tough time, Boris has, you know, and it's not just the backbenchers in the Conservative Party. It's the whole of Parliament that needs to sort this out. And, you know, I look at the opposition benches. They've got no interest in sorting this out. They're just playing politics with it all the time. I think, you know, we're strong enough within the Conservative Party to get this right.
Well, we will see. Lee, thank you very much indeed for joining us this evening. Well, joining me now to continue this debate is Bob Ward, Policy Director at the Grantham Research Institute at the London School of Economics. Bob, you know, I know you're a very committed person to, you know, achieving net zero and all of these things, but isn't the truth of it, given that we produce just 1% of global CO2 and that within the last 10 days, China have just opened the biggest coal-fired power station ever seen in the world, one of, I think, 80 that they built last year. Doesn't there come a point, and I'm not arguing about climate change with you, I'm arguing about policy. Doesn't there come a point when actually, for ordinary folk out there struggling with gas and electricity bills, to put 25% on their electricity bill to pay for wind energy becomes actually politically and morally unsustainable?
Well, the cost of living crisis, as you know, Nigel, is due to the cost of natural gas. It's not due to green energy. The reason our bills are going up, both our gas and electricity bills, is because gas is expensive to buy at the moment. The supply of gas around the world is not matching the demand. And so we, like most European countries, are paying far more. And that's because we're dependent on natural gas. So if we have more clean sources of domestic energy, it would actually lower our gas.
Bob, we're dependent on natural gas, and we burnt more natural gas last year than we've done for some years because the wind didn't blow. I mean, it's as simple as that. Those ridiculously priced, subsidised wind farms did not produce anything like